just maybe 1 minute.
No, that's
I'm not
fine,
there
Rose,
yet,
please.
but I'm close.
No, please.
I'm here.
Thanks, Stephanie. You just let me know, Rose.
I'm good to go, thank you.
Yep. All right, it is 5:58, so we'll call the meeting to order, if everybody's good with that. And we're gonna be starting off with a hearing to consider Ms. Kaplan's request to waiver a penalty of $380.50 for which is a late fee, filing late fee of the Vermont Homestead Declaration. And if
I can introduce this one.
yeah, that would be great.
Breaking information here, but just to introduce it, so, residents have until April 15th to file homestead declaration. And then it's late if you file after April 15th, but before October 15th, that's the cutoff where it's no longer possible. And, our tax administration software assessed the penalty, this year. It has twice now, as residents have filed a late homestead declaration, and then we get that information and it says to revise bills, and when I printed up revised bills and sent them to the residents, this penalty was on there. So I've done some research on this, and the whether to assess the penalty is completely at the discretion of the select board, as is abatement. And I spoke with Sandra Ferber over the weekend. She said that the select board has not approved a penalty for a late homestead declaration as far as she knows, and she would know. So I think that we have improperly assessed these penalties, and we should just remove them. And there's no need for abatement because they were improperly assessed. And well, Stephanie will know that. I will let the other taxpayer know. And if it comes up again between now and October 15th, then I would just remove that penalty. And I still need to revise the tax bills, but remove the penalty.
Okay.
So it would be something for us to consider in the future.
It's possible. I think the logic of it is to motivate people to file on time.
Sure.
Does it cost us anything if they file late? Huh.
No, it's just an additional step of having to go in on a regular basis, download any homestead declarations, print up a revised bill, get them out.
It can cost a lot of staff time.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly not $350 worth though.
Right.
Well, so I think that kind of makes it a moot point for Stephanie's request. But I think one of the other things that was raised was when this request initially came in, and I had kind of a brief conversation on whether or not if I guess at this point we do decide to create a policy, whether or not that policy would specifically say that considerations came to the select board, or if they should just go to the board of abatement, which handles other abatement related topics. And I thought there was some merit to that. So I guess to the extent that we feel like we want to revisit that, we can, but that would be a future agenda item.
Yeah, I think in the context of whether to assess the penalty or not,
Yeah.
period. Which I think we could probably look at when we get to town meeting articles, and because delinquent tax penalties is on the warning every year. So we'll be having that discussion, and we can talk about whether to add this. Jan Olson raised this initially. She saw it on the agenda and she said, hey, wait a minute, I don't think we've ever seen this assessed to it. And her big concern was no one knows about the penalty. So
Right.
you need to warn people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Oh.
Stephanie, do you have any comments, I guess, other than we'll be moving on?
I just want to know if I'm going to get revised tax bill before the 15th.
You'll have it tomorrow. I'll email you tomorrow and I can put it in the mail as well if you want.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't intentional, I can assure you. And it'll never happen again, penalty or no.
Well, thank you nonetheless, Stephanie, appreciate
All
it.
right, take care.
Bye.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing that additional homework, Kari, appreciate that, and I guess we'll close the hearing. Do we need a motion to close the hearing? I guess probably would
Very good form.
entertain motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Any opposed? Or, well, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And with that, we're a little early and we'll just roll right into our regular agenda. If that satisfies everyone. Okay, so we'll call the regular meeting to order at 6:03. And start off with the administrative topics. First being any additions or changes to the agenda. Do you have any new business that they'd like to add to the agenda for consideration? No, I don't.
Couple smaller things. One is, when we get to the highway department section, it might make sense to start with the speed studies. Because that might inform the conversation about, speed detection signs.
Okay,
And then the other one is that when we get to the budget, I'm the only, well, other than Bill, I'm the only highway department staffer here. No one else came tonight, so just so you're aware of that,
okay. And then I think we were gonna potentially add a dialogue around the ordinance training as part of an update for Tegan, but I'm not sure, is she gonna make it to the meeting?
I didn't ask for that,
It sounded like she was originally, yeah.
She's right there.
Oh,
So, town clerk report.
She's,
Yeah.
yeah, we're early. She's on time.
so we'll maybe just leave that as part of Tegan's update. Very good. Great, well, so, with those in consideration, I guess we'll just move through, approval of the minutes. Has everybody seen, the August 19th minutes that were in the share folder, and had a chance to review? Does anybody have any comments or changes that they'd like to discuss?
I had a change, what it was now, I emailed Rose about it, it was about the, change orders. And, who paid what amount of money paid for that, and I guess that was coming from the private loan, that's what I found out during the meeting.
Oh, yeah, the funding.
The dam funding, yeah.
So were the changes, integrated in the minutes that were circulated?
No, I got her after she circulated them.
Okay. Have that language, Rose?
I think
I could find it.
Yeah, that would be on my home computer, not
Oh,
this.
okay.
Yeah, I think I did change it and I sent it to Barbara.
And actually, I have it also,
Talk
so
about the
I can
process.
just change it before I post them tomorrow. I'll make that change. I've got Bill's email,
Okay.
so.
Well, I'm not sure where that, little prudent to accept them, I guess, unless everybody's had a chance to review them.
The minutes currently say that the funds from any change orders were to come from the CPA private loan and not from town funds. The motion was seconded, voted and carried. Does that not cover that?
Will you read it one more time, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it said, Bill Davis asked that the funds from any change orders were to come from the CPA private.
Oh, then they were changed. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, that's fine. That wasn't, I didn't read the updated ones. I
Perfect.
apologize.
So it's good now.
Then I'd entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
right,
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining because I wasn't at the meeting.
That's fair, thank you, Ann. And vote to approve the board orders that had been circulated and posted to the share folders. Everybody had a chance to review those. I have,
the latest one I haven't seen, but I'll look at it in a second.
okay.
Questions?
Just any questions on that other than Bill?
Yeah, I had one, the Dubois and King. What was that for?
That's for, they're the engineers on the Curtis Pond Dam,
That was-
so it's construction oversight, is that what we're calling it?
Okay,
They have someone on site pretty much constantly, and then they, review the recs, they're monitoring to make sure the construction is properly.
okay, so that was an unexpected cost?
No, that was part of their, not original contract, but their secondary contract to you.
Okay, and what was the Northeast Municipal, reappraisal for $4,500?
That's our reappraisal, we hired Nemrick. Yeah, you'll see a bill like that every month of the year, basically, it's spread out,
Is that big, $4,500?
spread out over the year.
Okay,
But remember, this is completely paid for, through our fund, which is funded by the state.
thank you. That's all.
All right. Bill, would you be?
I just saw,
comfortable
I
with
just
that?
looked at the last piece, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, great. So can I get a motion to approve orders as presented in the share folder?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Thank you very much. And the approval of PBR 4261, errors and omissions certificate from the town ministers. So John, do you need to speak to that, or does anybody have any questions about the errors that were provided?
Well, this is an unusual one. A property owner, called our attention to it. We have not put the value of an extra lot, 2-acre lot that the property owner owned. It wasn't part of this overall that value, so we added 62,500.
Then the property owner is aware of the adjustment. Yeah.
Wow.
Was this the first year that happened, or just got separated? Yeah.
And I couldn't find out where the error happened. We're dealing with this Byzantine software. And we're lucky if this is the only one.
Yeah. All right, well, does anybody have any other questions about the adjustment?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the correction?
Move it.
Second,
All in favor?
all right,
Aye. Any opposed? Right, thank you very much. And thanks, John.
See you guys.
Public comment, so, running a little ahead of schedule, but we'll take 15 minutes. Is anybody from the public? Oh, it's like just those that we have left on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom, from the public who, would like to speak to anything that's not already represented on the agenda? Everybody's on mute. But,
No, thank you.
thank you, Chris. All right, well, with that, then I feel comfortable just kind of rolling on, and considering the docket, we might as well.
awesome.
Yeah,
Great.
I'm a little uncomfortable moving forward on some of these until our guests arrive.
Yeah,
But I think we can certainly tackle Welcome to Calais.
yes. So the new Welcome to Calais program, Barbara, do you want to just kind of mention what that's about?
Absolutely. So thank you. So this is something that I wanted to do for a long time, and previous town clerks We're like, no, we don't need anything else to do. So it occurred to me earlier this year that could be a good program of Friends of Calais. So I proposed it to the Friends of Calais board, and they loved it and said yes, they would be happy to sponsor this program. So I've been working on it for the past several months, putting materials together and soliciting donated items for gift baskets. So this is intended to welcome new people who have moved to Calais, whether they have bought a home or they're renting, and to just welcome them a la welcome wagon. And so we launched it last Monday on September the 2nd and posted on Front Porch Forum. And we've got these kiosks around town in all of our stores, post offices, and the town office. And I think we may put one at Maple Corner Community Center. And so that's publicizing it. It's on Front Porch Forum, it's on Facebook, it's on the town website, the Friends website. And so when we launched it on Monday was to say, if you have moved here within the last 6 months, let us know. Because we're trying to play catch up with people who've moved here this year. We'll only do that like probably one more time, and then it's just as people arrive. So with that very first Front Porch Forum post and putting this out last Monday, we've gotten 7 responses, and I did 4 welcome visits over the weekend.
Wow.
And gave people a little welcome basket, so I'd like to share one with you. This is for looks only, I'm not giving it to you. First of all the baskets have been donated. Everybody who moves into town is getting, obviously, a town report with an explanation about town meeting and what this is for. People who are buying, who have bought a home, we're actually giving them Forever Calais. This is a $30 value. So if they're renting, I'm not giving it to renters, but the Calais Historical Society donated a bunch of these to us. So this is a really nice gift. Everybody is getting a Calais road map to keep in their front seat of their car. They're getting a few brochures that I've worked on. One of them is I call our governmental services brochure. And I'm going to give you all copies of these if you want them. Our governmental services brochure that kind of gives an overview of who we are in the town office, who you guys are, what we do, who to contact if you need to register your dog, register to vote, whatever. So that's one brochure they get. This is another brochure I developed. I call it the village brochure. It gives a little overview of the 6 villages in Calais and a little bit of historical background. You can see it's very brief, and the uniqueness of each village. We have another brochure that's in the works from somebody else, and it's going to be an events brochure. It will be an outline of all the events, annual events we have year after year at the same time, like Black Pipe Festival and Fall Foliage Festival and so forth. I just don't have it from her yet. And then each of the stores has given us a little brochure. We said we have a Maple Corner brochure in here, an Adamak Co-op brochure. I am still waiting on the one from East Calais General Store. And then they have a little jar of homemade granola. They have, this is donated by Adrian Wade. We have Cabot cheese donated by Rachel Keys. We have fresh baked items, which Allison Caldwell does for us. We have a $10 gift certificate to Schoolhouse Farm. And so the action for you guys is, if you have any other suggestions, I'm going to give you a copy of each of these brochures. So that should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It should be 6. One for each of the select board members in Kari, because he hasn't even gotten all of this yet. That's the village brochure, the governmental services brochure. Do you each want a roadmap? Pardon me? Yes. Okay, I'll pass it down.
Just have to look up one.
Yeah.
Basically, everything has been donated except for the printing of the brochures that I developed. So if you don't want it, give it back to me. Don't toss it, give it back to me.
I don't see call it the dump road and not us.
Yeah, exactly. Tegan, do we know how old that map is?
I do not know how old that map is, but it was the most easily
used one that we had.
It was the one of the most interest and the easiest to read, yeah. So
I still call it Dump Road anyway.
yeah, exactly. So, two things is one, if you choose to read the brochures, if you have any suggestions, any other ideas that you have to enhance the welcome program, I've been trying so hard to get little bottles of syrup as a
Oh, yeah.
gift, and I have not been able to get anybody to donate those. If you have any other resources or can help us solicit, donated items to add to the gift basket, please, please, please let us know. Any suggestions you have?
Does the Trails Committee have printed maps or brochures?
They do, but they are in color, and there's
Okay.
like 12 of them. And so there's information in one of those brochures about the trails and where they can go to find the maps. But I wasn't gonna print those because such a small percentage of people would actually go out and use them.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I wanted to offer is I did just submit a report to the Friends of Calais yesterday with a spreadsheet of the responses we've gotten from people because right now I've done 4 visits and I have a 5th one this week. But we've gotten other responses from people that were like, this is so great. So if you guys would like me to email that spreadsheet to you of the responses we've gotten, I'd be happy to do that. I didn't want to bother you with it unless you ask for it.
What do you do when you go for a visit?
Oh, so I first, of course, introduce myself, tell them that this program sponsored by Friends of Calais and the Calais Town Office. I go through the basket with them, just like I did with you, and explain what we're giving them and so forth, and that we simply were reaching out to welcome them, to let them know how they can get involved and engaged in the community. We end up talking about voter registration, we talk about dog registration. We talk about people, I've had 3 people ask me, where do you get your car fixed? I said, okay, now, I said, this is just me personally talking, I can tell you where I take my car, I'm not speaking on behalf of the town. I let people know how difficult it can be to find the primary care provider, and if they haven't found one, do that right away. I talked to them about all the opportunities that we offer with the town, the municipal opportunities, boards and committees and commissions. Each conversation is different. I spent probably an hour and 10 minutes with one person and 15 minutes with somebody else. It all depends on kind of their response and how many questions they have and how gregarious they are, how subdued they are. I've really been enjoying it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it all.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you have any questions or suggestions, please be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes.
Awesome. So the curb cut, we're a little early.
Yeah.
Somebody's coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Welcome.
Can I interrupt and ask what you were all saving for my report at the end? I missed it as I was walking in.
No, they were just clarification on whether or not we wanted to add anything about the ordinance change, training.
Okay.
I couldn't remember where we left that either as an update, from you and or.
We didn't specify how.
But it's, ordinance discussions are on the agenda anyway, so wherever is appropriate. Would it be appropriate, I guess, to do the application for 402 Butterfield Road?
Think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Everybody had a chance to review that?
So,
Sorry.
John, the road foreman did inspect it and had no concerns. I don't know if you saw Neil Maker's recommendation, he suggested a condition that, construction equipment be cleaned afterwards just because of the invasive species.
Motion to accept.
With the stipulations.
Yeah.
that Neil has asked.
Carly, did you send me that, the new maker thing?
I might not have.
Okay, I need that. Thanks.
Yeah,
Cause I read everything today and I don't remember seeing.
Yeah, okay.
so I guess that would just be, as they're leaving, the property, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so you don't track any weed seeds with them or something.
Mhm.
I have a good question. Is this it's essentially a shared driveway. Is it, a subdivision? It is. It's a two-lot subdivision, right? You're Jen.
Yes, it is a subdivision, that was set aside by Vermont Land Trust, certain area on the property. So they pretty much directed where the driveway needs to
Is
be.
there any chance there would ever be a third
No,
lot? Okay. I'm just asking because if you do a third lot, then it becomes a private road and then it's a little different. But since that's never gonna happen, we won't worry about it.
no, I don't think so.
So there's a motion to accept on the floor from Bill. Are there any other questions?
As conditions, right?
As conditions, for, being the, equipment before leaving the premises?
And as the applicant, you have that information and you,
I just got it and I will certainly. Do we, like, pressure washing?
Yeah, I assume that there's, you're working with an excavator, to do the work. Yeah, so the request has come from, the, town's, tree warden, who often participates, in curb cut applications when it makes sense to do so. And his only note, was that because there are, invasive species, in and around the curb cut, that, any heavy equipment, just get pressure washed before they're transported away from the site, so that doesn't, transport any seeds or invasives with them, but.
No, I understand completely.
Yeah, yeah.
And I agree, I've been trying to get rid of stuff.
Well, thank you. And yeah, so that'll be added to the copy of the curb cut application, with the approval. And so if you can just make the excavator aware of that condition, that would be great.
I know.
And then, the road, or I guess John will, need to sign off on it when it's completed.
Yeah, one of us will, yeah,
Okay.
we'll inspect it.
Thank you.
all right.
So, is there a second then?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Thank you. Thanks. So, we'll get you a copy of the paperwork, with the next day or so.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on. Forth between tabs. The right of use permit, for Washington Electric. So that's a permit for, work within the right of way, along the, North Calais and Duger Brook intersections for communications line. Where is that power?
Power.
It's power line. That would be coming from the east side of North Calais Road, going under the road and then up, Duger Brook, to the west, to a lot that's one or two lots,
Yeah.
up the road from, North Calais Road. And
That's right.
it seems pretty straightforward to me. There was a question, I guess, when it came in, whether or not there was any rationale for going in the town.
Yeah.
Travel lane as opposed to adjacent.
Yeah,
to
my
the
understanding
road.
is they're looking to go along the edge of the road.
Oh, okay,
The first question that came up was, why not overhead?
Exactly.
And Brian from WEC is here tonight. He can speak to that, but it apparently was a easement issue. They weren't given permission by neighbors to establish a pole, so. Is that right, Brian?
Yes, we tried to take a couple of routes there, tried going overhead the whole way. And then we tried to get a pole across the street and then go underground on private property again. And at the end, that just didn't work out. So we also have an issue with wetlands in the backside of the property. We met with wetlands. And they said, even if we were given the easement, we would not be able to, go underground through that wetlands. It's in the corner, between Fair and, Malone, in the roadside. There's there's some defined wetlands right there.
Mhm.
So the only option that the state gave us was going down through the, travel portion of the road.
So the only real concern there, as with the last one up on Worcester Road, was crossing a culvert. And I spoke with Brian, he said they'll do everything they can to go around the culvert. If they have to go underneath, our recommendation be, go well below, and a concrete cap would probably be a good idea, because culverts are meant to get clogged and replaced from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, the only, culvert that we saw was over on the Malone property, so if there's something I missed, please let me know. But we were gonna stop short of that culvert and come up a pole at that point. So far as I could tell, there was no culverts between, starting point and getting to the Malone property. But if we ran into one, the first thing we try to do is go around it versus going under it. That would be a last option, trying to go underneath that culvert.
What's the depth?
We're gonna try to get 4 feet. We're using a piece of equipment that's kind of new to us, that a contractor has. It's called a vibe plow. We have cable that's already in conduit. It's on a roll. He puts it on a piece of machinery that actually takes it off the roll and plows it directly into the ground. Then a piece of machinery comes in behind. It's less evasive, cleaner job versus digging. So 4 feet's the goal.
Are you actually gonna be digging up the road bed?
Excuse me?
Will you be digging up the road bed at all, or are you out in the right of way, outside of the road bed?
We're gonna be right at the road edge. I mean, if we go down the left side of Duger Brook, there's some trees and stuff that are fairly close to the road. So we would be just, again, the goal is to get just off the travel portion of the road.
Harry, the road crews reviewed this and it all looks fine to them?
Yeah. The only concern was a culvert, but,
And the permit language says if the hardened surface of the road is disturbed, it'll be restored.
Mhm.
Yeah, but this is a gravel road, so there's layers. So it's not just the surface I'd be concerned about if they were digging into the road bed and all. Okay.
Well, we have you, Brian. I mean, it seems like this is a request that's coming up a little more frequently. I think this is the third one that I guess, the second one from WEC that we've looked at in probably about 6 months. Is this, I mean, I think there are pretty obvious advantages to putting things underground from kind of a infrastructure hardening perspective, but it surely complicates the process and adds a certain amount of expense. Is this kind of a trend that you're seeing, or is there anything in particular that's driving this? It sounds like there might also be some easement issues too.
Yeah, go ahead. It's getting more and more difficult as a whole to get easements from people. This one is a little more driven by wetlands. In this case, the one over on Worcester Road was strictly could not get easements from anybody.
Mhm.
We did have another one pop up in another town, so I think it's a trend in such a way that it's just getting more and more difficult to get these easements to get stuff done.
Where WEC ends up terminating the underground and then coming back up, are you guys, putting infrastructure equipment that would make it easier to tap off of that from your primary to carry on any underground service, to other properties further up Duger Brook in this example, or, how does that generally get terminated?
More times than not, when it's underground, we install an underground vault and put a transformer on it. In this
Yeah.
case, because of the wetlands, that kind of bleeds over to the Malone property, we're gonna terminate on a pole. So that would, for future use, that'd be a much easier transition to take off that pole and keep going down the road overhead.
Well, I don't see any other particular issues. It's unfortunate that at the expense, for the property developer, but that's the way it goes in some of these cases. I'll take the opportunity for a plug, Brian. The more of these that end up going underground, the more helpful it is for us as a town municipality to have as constructed documentation on the record, so that the drawings are good and generally put us all in the right frame of mind in space and time. But as we have kind of turnover at the municipality and in the road crew, it really helps to kind of help identify where these, particularly where the terminations are. If we can have documentation that isn't a fully surveyed plan, but does have some dimensions that reference, how you might triangulate to find these features where they're buried. The last couple of times we've had, DigSafe try to identify a location, they were either flat wrong or didn't quite nail it, and we hit stuff anyway. In those cases, that was communications lines, but any record that we can have after construction that can better identify the as-built conditions, that would be great.
I will get you some kind of as-built after it's installed, and we'll also use there's some warning tape out now that makes it easier to trace.
Yeah.
So we will specify that going in the ground to hopefully make it easier down the road to be located.
So that tape is buried more shallow, is that right?
Yeah, it's generally just above it.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to get 4 feet. I think that's about as far as this plow. The advantage of the plow, it's less evasive. You know what I mean? You're not digging a 3-foot wide bucket the whole way. It's a cut of 6-8 inches, maybe more. So if it's not deep enough, then if we run into ledge or something, then we're gonna dump some concrete on it and obviously let you know where that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. So fresh motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Thank you. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the attendance.
All right. Thanks for considering this.
Very good. Moving on to the highway department, which we're still running ahead of schedule. Feel all right with
I think
that?
it's okay.
Yeah.
I think Toby's gonna come down, but we can get started.
Okay.
So we were gonna start with the speed studies. So we got results from 4 of the 5 roads. They're doing the 5th right now. So we have Adamant Road, Pekin Brook, Lightning Ridge, and North Calais. And they ran these for a week in August. I guess is their typical protocol, try to get a large enough sample size. And it was for 7 days. And then, I think these locations were selected by the select board. either last year or maybe even the year prior in relation to potentially changing speed limits. So these have been in the works for a little while. I think the speed limits are 35 on each of these roads in most cases.
Look those up, I think on Beacon Road, it's actually 30.
30.
And it was 35 on the other three.
Okay. And so based on the results, it looks like, so just a refresher, if you haven't read the setting speed limits manual in a while, the state recommends using the 85th percentile, the speed at which 85% of drivers are going at or below. Use that to set the speed limit, unless there's other circumstances like a blind curve or something like that. And I think the logic of that is that most of us have an intuitive sense of what's safe. And if you set the speed limit artificially low or, too low, what results is you just have more people violating the speed limit. And unless you have a way of enforcing that, it's pretty challenging to get people to slow down. So it's more of a gauge than anything else. But anyway, if you're using that logic, it looks like Lightning Ridge and Pekin Brook are at about the right place. Adamant, the 85th percentile was higher, is at 42. And on the flats of North Calais Road, it was up to 45.5. So people are driving quite a bit faster there.
I'm a little guilty of that.
Yep.
Mike's add to what you said, it's my understanding that if we don't base it on these studies, unless we have a really good reason, then the state police will refuse to enforce it.
Oh, I don't know about that, actually.
Yeah.
I would need to clarify that.
State police, it's good, yeah.
I don't mean state police, whoever it is that enforces.
Sheriff.
Washington County Sheriff.
Whoever, but it won't be enforced unless we can back up.
And or hold up in court.
Yeah, I think that's.
More open court if somebody's strong enough to challenge you, most speeders at that. You know, if they get a ticket, they hope the cop won't show up at it's a hearing, but if the cop shows up, they'll say, well, I wasn't speeding, cop will show them the radar. That's the end of the game, unless he has a lawyer, most lawyers ain't smart enough to go, I shouldn't say that. But they don't even look at that part of it, they just look at is the radar proper, did they tune it properly, et cetera, et cetera. I speak about Lightning Ridge Road, I don't know about the rest.
Well, I don't know if the car was finished.
No, I'm good.
I'm looking here, at the manual, the cop off the manual, and you're right about there are mitigating circumstances. And Lightning Ridge Road, there are curves, like Tom McCarroll's house, just one car off the road, that went down way too fast. There are farms, they sort of way. There are kids walking the road, there are bicyclists. It's a pretty busy road, and 35, if you look, even though it's 85th percentile, like the state recommends certain statute. They have no for you. If you look at the speed limit down through here, you see many of the drivers are going between 25 and 30. In fact, the majority, they were going under 35. So I think the speed limit, you have a good legal, defensible argument making speed limit 30 miles an hour.
You're talking about just Lightning Ridge Road.
Or Lightning Ridge Road, I can't speak for the rest, I speak about Lightning Ridge Road. Remember, statute, if it stays that way for 5 years, you gotta be, it's enforceable. I remember, I think it was Rick Keene, telling me very city, they didn't do a speed study, they just changed the speeds. And 5 years. And people go into South Main Street, or North Main Street, I should say, it's 25 miles an hour. And most people follow that speed limit. That's my take on it. As one of those on Lightning Ridge Road, you watch these cars go by, especially school kids, parents in the morning, rushing to school. Like they're in a hurry, you can't get there in time, things like that. So I would, that's my.
Oh, that's interesting. So because it was done in August, when there was no school.
Right, that's
You're
right.
saying the problem actually happens.
Well, it happens all the time, but
Yeah.
it is nature of the beast. The school buses are nearly empty or empty, and the parents are driving the kids to school, which is fine.
but she always seems to be late. And they're whipping down the road, trying to get there by 9. Anyway, I think 30 under the circumstances, with all the way the road is shaped and the traffic, people walking and farms and everything else should be 30. I mean, that's the good defensible I can get there. A little lower, if I couldn't get away with that, but 30 is a defensible.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, Doug, you.
I find out this summer, because I got a lot of little black cabs hanging around. I got a lot of people walking their kids and stopping and looking, and that road is pretty busy. Michael's, you know that. Yeah. And, I'm concerned about, cost us a lot of money to fence that farm so we wouldn't, so the calves wouldn't get in the road and get wrong. I mean, I bet we spent over $3,000 just in fencing. Just no labor, just fencing posts and street fence and cedar posts and wire and just to keep it to it. And we run 4 strands, a lot of it, just to make sure that these guys going by here ain't gonna kill a calf or something. You know, black Angus calves are worth a lot of money right now. $9,000 for a day-old calf. So I guess we can afford to fence it a little bit better, but still, I hate to see them get on.
Move too wide when you were just replacing
Yeah.
for speeding. There are places where it's a little narrower, like Tom Carl's area, but going down from the hill from probably the old schoolhouse on the right, where Dinah, brain dead here.
Yes, yes.
Yes, house going down through there, it's where they start to rev up. But I will say that, if they see something in the road, sometimes they slow down, but, it's just, I think people drive the speed limit they see. And if it's too slow, you're right, they won't. 20 miles an hour, not gonna go 20. 30 is not unreasonable. Peking Brook has 30 miles an hour. And that's plenty of space to drive if you want to go faster, you shouldn't. What I'm saying is, I'm just saying it's not unreasonable, guys. Yeah.
Our roads are too wide in this town.
Yeah, Doug, I don't want to get into the width of the road.
Okay.
You know, it's been registered and, you know, I.
What do you want to get?
What's that?
What do you want to get on?
Oh, well, I do want to, I appreciate this data finally coming in. It's taken a while for us to finally see it. I got a couple. Too late.
Yeah, after school's closed, everything.
Oh, no, I mean, I think there's a good argument for
That may be
reducing the speed on Lightning Ridge relative to one, the speed limit on Pekin Brook, and the volume of traffic that's on that road, which is more, and the apparent, you know, observation of that speed limit, and relative to, you know, the school being on Lightning Ridge, other active farms being on Lightning Ridge, and the reduced volume of traffic that's on that road. I mean, there's some continuity for sure. And, you know, I think the speed, I would imagine anecdotally, the speed signs, having a active monitoring speed sign on roads that we feel get a higher use of traffic and a higher issue of compliance, having signs stay on those roads permanently for monitoring purposes. You know, one of the things that those signs give us a window into is the time of day that we should be targeting enforcement, and that's a real asset to us when we've got limited resources, because I think that at the end of the day, that's really what it's going to come down to. We can raise the speed limit or decrease the speed limit, but if we don't find a way to deal with the enforcement element of it, it's going to become a moot point.
It's true.
But you know, I think you're right, that people generally have a tendency to observe the speed limits, at least I would hope so, but So then I guess the question is, you know, how do we make that decision? And one of the things that we've been talking about doing and we'll be discussing later in the meeting is the formation of an ordinance committee that will be tasked by the select board to make changes to ordinances and review changes to them in a warned, transparent way, and in a way that doesn't get bogged down by the select board's otherwise full agenda, but is still largely informed by the priorities of the select board. And the road issues are right on the top of that list. So if we can get that formed and appointed, then making these changes, and being responsive to the petition that had circulated, a year and a half ago is the next step, I think, from my perspective. Does anybody have any other comments?
I do. Corey, what is the turnaround time to get a road study done?
That's hard to say. I know these were requested, at least
Yeah.
last year. It was over a year to get these done.
A year ago last spring, and he was actually going to do them that summer, but then the flood hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he, you know, Lightning Ridge Road was washed out,
And,
parts of it, so it didn't make any sense to do the study then.
and,
So the only one he did was the one on the hard tops.
and I think they prioritized us this year, doing 5. I mean, I don't mind asking again, but I have no expectation that we would get another one this, you know, in 2024.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think the other big question there is that we've been kind of working through that dialogue a little bit with Toby, but originally, when we were talking about the radar signs, some of them were gonna be more portable and mobile, and some of them obviously more fixed. And they've proved to be more fixed than mobile in most cases, with only a handful of exceptions. But I think part of the charge, I think, to this ordinance committee is going to be having a process for identifying which roads can be targeted for study signs. If we have 1 or 2 signs that can be deployed in a more mobile fashion, so that we can, most of them have a recording feature, so we can do these internally, as long as we have the training and can roll through
Because
them.
we could look at Lightning Road Road right now and see what the signs are as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so making sure that we have people who are trained to do that, and then we have the appropriate signs that can be moved around, and as well as, you know, the point's been brought up in the last couple of meetings, you know, who's choosing where to put these signs and when to move them. And so I think part of what I'd like to see would be a process for identifying what the roads are relative to feedback from the
I
community.
got 2 signs on my road.
Yeah,
They don't work.
and
They don't work.
they
Tell
don't
them.
work,
No, they don't.
like,
They might do it for the day because they know what's there. And after that, they know there's no patrol on this road. There's none. And you know, we look back at this and we see where there's more traffic on this road than Lightning Ridge. But you know what? There's only 1, 2, 3 houses, maybe 4 on this road. On Lightning Ridge Road, we got what, 25, 30? You know, people, this guy just walked in, give him a chance. He lives on Lightning Ridge Road, he's got kids, and he lives just beyond my farm. I'm going down that hill, he'll tell you how fast they come. But, go ahead.
Usually over 35, I don't know.
Yeah.
I drive 35 and I know how fast that is.
yeah.
And I got a 2-year-old and it is scary watching people drive down.
Yeah. And so part of what we're trying to decide here, so what are the mechanisms for identifying when and where we get the sheriff's department to sit where they need to sit. And before you came in, we were reviewing kind of the data that came in from the CVRPC traffic studies that pull the data and give us a range of where we can consider setting speed limits. And right now, it seems like the consideration amongst this group would be to look at reducing the speed on Lightning Ridge at least down to 30. And then, you know, I think it's really only a decision of Second to that, it's a matter of figuring out how we target enforcement, and we have a pretty limited sheriff's department budget. And last year it got increasingly painful because their hourly rate went up pretty significantly, reducing our hours of coverage by quite a bit, like 30%.
No, half.
Half,
The
yeah.
price doubled, and we had to cut the hours in half.
So as a community, we're gonna have to decide to fund that, but then that's still not likely going to be enough to get us the coverage that we want. So we're gonna have to be really smart about how we choose to target enforcement, and Lightning Ridge is right on the top of the list.
I'm willing to put 2 tractors right side by side in my door, so they can't see the tractor, they can't see the cruiser, either way. They can't see it. So they go by my house 40, 50 miles an hour, and down by the top of the hill in the spring of the year, the car's in the road, right? In the air. Yeah, in the air, it's dangerous. And you said you weren't talking about this, but his road has gotta be fixed. I talked to you today about that road, it's gotta be fixed. Somebody's gonna get killed there, there might be Toby up here, cause with his light on, cause he comes down here one year, last year. With his light going, the siren going, and Jesus, I'm telling you that, down that hill, you've been down there, it was like this, you know? Yeah, his light come on, yeah. He made it, didn't he? Well, he can't even mow his lawns now, but he's much, every time the guy who drives truck, he loves to drive gravel. He loves it. That's all.
Doug, I don't mean to be rude or cut you off, but we're trying to, I'm trying to stay focused on the speed study and decide what we need for next steps here.
So I think what you proposed is absolutely right. I mean, if we're gonna change the speed limit, it's gotta be done by ordinance.
Right.
We're gonna talk in a few minutes about creating an ordinance committee, and we're gonna direct them actually a second priority. We have a couple of very top priority things to work on, and then we're gonna ask them to turn their attention to roads. And at that point, they can hold a public hearing, they can let people come in and talk about any of the road ordinances. And we'll have that discussion.
And I guess the other thing that is kind of a complicating matter here, and not something that should be overlooked, is the expense of changing the speed limit sign. So we'll need a count of signs that would then need to be replaced for any of these roads that are being recommended for adjustments, because we'll need to appropriate those funds. I know we have a signed budget, but I don't know to what extent that gets used annually, mostly to replace stolen signs. Right. So
There are some reflectivity issues with some of the signs anyway.
we have reflectivity issues. We also have size issues and compliance issues. So obviously anything that's going to get a speed limit sign is going to take priority, and having adequate signage added to the road with updated signs, but we'll need an
We should account
inventory.
for that in our budgeting this year.
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
My wife wants, she's complaining about cowboys, like my farm, cowboys, you know. Cowboys, parent farm, she wants, some of these signs should have a cowgirl. With a pigtail or ponytail, she complains about that, she does. Huh? She's got it right? Yes, she does.
Well, yeah.
So, Toby, you're coming at the tail end of a discussion about speed studies and a future directive for an ordinance committee. I think you were gonna report on some mobility and data collection by chance?
The road crew and Kari and I talked about where we should put the other remaining radar signs. So the discussion said we should do it on villages because that's where we want people to slow down. So we already have Maple Corner taken care of. So the thought was to then also Out on Route 14, we have East Calais Village on Route 14 taken care of with radar signs. So the suggestion was to do, I guess there've been some complaints about people in Adamant going through the village too fast, so. We would put one on either side of the store down there, one on Haggett and one on Adamant, the other side. There was also talk about, putting one above the school so people would slow down going down to the school. So I put a stake there on, Lightning Ridge prior to where you get to the school. That would essentially put all the signs out into the field. And, so there was one other sign that had been in Maple Corner that was not working. I've, talked to the manufacturer in Montreal. I've got the parts coming to fix that. And that's a sign that we can actually, it's light enough to move to different places in town, so we can choose. If some complaint comes up, we can put one on a traffic sign that's already in place, or put up another sign itself. It's sort of a mobile device. And then at some point, Kari and Bill are going to learn how to take the data off the signs, as well as myself. So that, essentially you can generate reports about what's happening at each one of those locations.
Great.
There was one more sign that we were gonna put going into the North Calais, North Calais Village,
Right.
somewhere on there. We haven't really
Somewhere in there, we
scoped
haven't
exactly where.
located it.
So the question, we don't even know which side of the village, whether you're going north or south coming down from Foster Hill.
To be determined.
Okay.
It might be worth, maybe we put the more mobile one there, like temporarily on either side, and just see if it makes sense to have it on one side versus the other.
Yeah.
More permanently. Or, we could add it to a sign budget in the next year, to start adding more of these as we want to start putting more permanent features, I guess.
The other thing I think that's available on the new signs, I haven't checked, but you can actually have them work as a radar sign without the flashing lights. So you could actually leave it there for a while and see if after you turn it back on, if there's any differentiation between people's behavior when the sign is on or when it's not. So that would be something that we can look at scheduling to see if there's, if the signs are effective or not effective.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Is there a decision to make off of that, at the moment?
Well,
Other
that's,
than-
that's a plan.
That sounds like a good location.
I don't know if it needs a formal approval, but if it works for you, we'll go ahead and.
Is the sign on Lightning Ridge, is that like halfway down the hill past Lily's, around the corner there, or where's that one gonna be?
Yeah, so the one that we put in that's going up the hill will move down to going down the hill instead of that one there. It's, so essentially we'll just relocate that one sign.
Yeah, there's been talk of tonight about it, people are going really fast down that hill.
Yeah, that's essentially, it's
Okay,
going down at the bottom. It'll be at the bottom of the hill before they then head past Gray Road.
cool.
Well, you ought to have one right there before you get those big ditches, you know what I mean? On my new job, huh? I know you got caught one time down there last year.
Sure.
I wanted to go down and see if you were still in the road or in the truck, where the hell you were. Remember that? Oh, yeah, okay.
So I think that sounds like we've got that pretty well covered, and we'll save the balance of it for, the ordinance, committee, discussion, and try to set a timeline for that.
Okay.
I think you'll see a lot more speeding on when the school's running, up and running.
We'll be able to see that on our
Yeah.
sign, so we'll have this as a good
Yeah,
thorough
we will.
baseline.
Yeah.
That money on,
Compare it to data from school year.
All right, thank you. Moving to the rest of the highway department,
So Moscow Woods,
Yeah.
if I could
Yeah,
jump in.
please.
So remember, you approved changing the plan of action there to go ahead and get some temporary repairs this year using the grant money. And then proceed with getting us, so it has a mitigation grant, isn't it, to replace the entire bridge because it is so decrepit and in need of full replacement. So DeWolf Engineering has provided a plan designed for the temporary repair, and now we've got to go out and get a contractor that can execute the work this year, because it's this calendar year that needs to be done to access the grant. So anticipating we may have trouble getting two or more bids, which is what's required by our purchasing policy, or asking you to consider this a emergency situation, we'll still try to get two bids. But in case we are only able to get one, we just need to move forward.
And do you need us to do something? Say that's okay.
Yeah, I think a formal approval that we can, I think it's better to do it now than wait till we
Yeah.
have just one bid.
We declare that it's an emergency and therefore you get to pick.
Well,
Therefore, if you don't get multiple bidders.
we'll still bring the bid to you for final approval, but, and maybe that's the way to handle it once we have a bid, but, again, it seems more appropriate to say that this would qualify as an emergency, now, rather than wait till the 11th hour and then, I don't know, I'm not sure, but.
So the real issue is, so we've been working to do a larger repair to that dam, including the abutments as well as the structural steel. But then, it was decided that the dam is going to be removed. And the dam is what causes the problem now, because the width between the abutments under the bridge is only 17 feet. And when they take the dam out, the bankful width of that stream will be over 35 feet. So essentially, it's a constriction and it's a hazard in the future. So the point of not spending a lot of money to temporarily or bring it back up to a 10 or 20 year life is to agree that when the dam goes, it's going to be a hazard. So we're going to apply for a hazard mitigation grant to deal with the bridge. And whether we get it or we don't get it, that's going to be up in the air. The next cycle of mitigation with the state of Vermont is at 100% instead of the usual 75 or 80%. So we've also talked to the Friends of the Winooski that are trying to pair their dam removal with our bridge as a total package. I don't know if that's going to work, but that's going to be the approach we'll take. So essentially, it's an emergency because we just need to get it done. The state grant to repair the bridge expires at the end of the year. So work would have to be done, right, have to get an extension.
And would it cover, what needs to be done?
Oh, yeah, by a long shot.
That will-
Yeah, this is just a short, just a temporary fix of just putting in some steel girders as opposed to redoing the whole foundation and all the
And
rest.
it's, I mean, that sounds like a change to what the original request was. Will the state accept that?
Yeah, they will.
They will.
So the emergency is we need to get the steel fixed before the winter.
Right.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit
So
on.
the deadline is short, and that's the problem in trying to find a contractor on a short basis and get 3 bids and actually get the work done is the reason that we're thinking it might end up being an emergency purchase.
What's the proposed time frame for getting a bid circulated or a call for bids?
Immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, the Wolf is working on it. I've talked with Chris Temple and he was going to call directly to a couple of vendors he knew that would do that kind of work, and he hasn't come back to me yet, but he's pursuing it.
And I guess my question is, the follow-up question is whether or not it's likely to have somebody and a need to make a decision on a particular bid, between now and the next meeting.
Oh. I imagine it can wait for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can't tell you when I'm gonna see where there might be somebody who's a contractor to provide the work. I mean, that would be able for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say you need to approve it.
Yeah.
I don't think we can delegate the authority to approve it.
No, yeah, so I think that it would probably make sense then, in that case, to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. And if there's only one, then we'll declare it an emergency purchase and or consider the approval kind of as part of the same package of decisions. As opposed to just declaring the emergency now.
Yeah.
So this doesn't require an RFP?
No, you have to, you have to, RFP is for a formal sealed bid process required for anything above 250,000. If it's between 25 and 250, you must get at least 2 bids. Unless it's an emergency, there's a few other exceptions to that.
And those 2 bids don't have to go out, don't have to be achieved via an RFP.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I guess my logic is that it's gonna feel like an emergency if we're only getting one person willing or able to put in a
Yeah.
bid and we still need to get it done.
Yeah.
And need to award that bid, so it probably makes sense to consider that as a kind of a collective action. And we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting. Are we okay with that?
Yeah. no, that works.
Issue, okay, so. That'll bring us to proposing the maintenance agreements for the East Calais Stormwater Project.
So you saw drafts of these agreements, last meeting. Reminder that, Regional Planning Commission is paying for 2 stormwater projects in East Calais because they identified them to be top polluters in the region, at least in the Kingsbury branch region. There are always some strings attached. What's required here is that the town agree to maintain these sites for 10 years. And most of that work is cleaning, if once a year, bringing in a Vector truck to basically suck out all the debris. And then there's some also, especially after large rain events, monitoring, just make sure that things are still functioning well, some mowing and things like that. So they asked that the select board approve them first, and then they will ask the local landowners that are affected to also sign the agreements. And I shared, since meeting with you 3 weeks ago, I shared these with the road crew. They do definitely have concerns about adding maintenance to their workload over the year. I found out that there is funding potentially available through the Regional Planning Commission for this kind of work that they will support, bringing in a contractor. Like, we don't own a Vector truck, we're not about to purchase one, so we would have to contract that out anyway. So as much as we could contract out and have funded through the Regional Planning Commission, that will be what we want to do. It's definitely problematic to commit to adding work to the workload. However, I will say that the gully erosion that's down below the post office is a very serious issue. You kind of have to go down there to see it, but it's a matter of time until that erosion backs up and starts to undermine Mascot Woods Road. So something needs to be done. This is a solution that will allow us to have someone else pay for it. So I would recommend.
Would the road group needs to the inspections?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to do all, we wouldn't have to hire out all the work.
Right. I don't, I foresee we'll have some role in it, but as much.
This Vector, I love learning that word, it's gonna be a great Scrabble word.
Yeah.
This Vector truck would only have to come in once a year?
Once a year. Yeah, and the other parts of the process, just so you're aware, the state, we've applied for a permit from the state. The town is the applicant. But we have, the Regional Planning Commission is doing all the administrative work. There's an engineer that's helping with it. And on Wednesday night, there's a development review board hearing because there's a conditional use permit that's as part of this. So it's getting fairly late in the season, as we were just discussing, and so it's looking like these projects probably won't be constructed until 2025. But anyway, we want to keep moving. We've sent out letters to the neighbors. We're just moving through the process.
Being at the highway department, they are concerned about this, and they're, it's something new like that. And some of them, have to go view this thing within 24 hours after a storm event. So I think there's gonna be procedures that need to be set up. And reminders and, yeah, it's gonna be something different.
Yeah, part of the inspection is that if there's rain events greater than 2.5 inches, I think, then we need to go in, log, inspect and see if there's any damage done or,
2.5 inches where?
Bill, you're concerned that just the inspection just the inspection is still too much?
Well, it's just something else that they have to do now. If the roads are out, do you want to go have them inspect this, or do you want to go have them fix the roads and take the trees out that are cut on top of the roads? It's one of those, it's just another thing that has to happen. I bet you they're gonna want to go open the roads first before they go down and look for the source effect. Well,
What is?
Wasn't
What
all
happens if we
inspection? I don't
don't do it? Yeah, what's the burden of proof for
Well,
completing this? I guess we're
supposed to
gonna
log.
be keeping a log, right?
Keeping a log.
Yeah.
I don't know what the penalty.
But I read it, it said that if we didn't do it, they would tell us that we had to do it, that they would set up a deadline, so,
You said you would do it?
yeah.
Rose?
I was wondering if, someone else might be able to do it, just like we've had the Curtis Pond Dam monitors for all these years. I wonder if someone in East Calais, might be able to, or two people might be able to take that on.
There's a pretty robust volunteer sector in East Calais. I can think of a couple names off the top of my head that would be willing to do this if it was something a citizen could do.
Which would be part of the procedure you're talking about.
True, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
What are you looking for from us for this?
Well, we need
Decision
to,
approve.
yeah, we need a decision to approve these, that has to be you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty significant piece of infrastructure to have them put in on without much expense. We do have the maintenance, but I just think that, with the last couple of seasons worth of flooding activity and the motivation within the community for people to look for ways to contribute, yeah, I think it'd be beneficial, I guess maybe for the road commissioner and maybe emergency management to come up with a hit list of critical infrastructure that needs to be checked, and just to maybe formalize who's going to monitor and log these things. And, Curtis Dam is going to be on one of those, and these infrastructure elements are going to be on one of those, so that it's not something that the road crew necessarily needs to put on their list. That would be great.
The inspector of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Add to the list, I bet we could find somebody who could do that.
We got rid of the wear of coal, so.
Aware of muck,
Yeah.
monitor of muck,
Monitor of muck.
I see there's only one signature line, so maybe the thing.
just to authorize me.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, does anybody else have any other questions? Or concerns? Are we comfortable approving? So I entertain a motion to authorize me to sign the maintenance agreement with the CVRPC.
Yeah, there's 4 of them, actually.
All four of them.
They're
For
all the
these
same.
stormwater infrastructure elements.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, great. Then I'll sign those. Thank you, Kari.
Sure, thank you.
Discussion of removing road gravel.
So we don't need to, nail this down tonight, but I did want to sort of introduce you to this idea that we've been getting, I think, more requests to remove gravel from yards, from lawns recently. And I know it's come up several times in my months here, and it's a challenge. Just to make you aware of it, it's a challenge. We don't have specialized equipment for doing that, and sometimes it's a relatively small amount. Sometimes it can be a significant amount of gravel, and so it's so far I don't think I've said yes to any, and so other than ones I've done myself. But I, they were small enough to do that, but it's, I guess I'm wondering, is that an appropriate use of road crew time? And again, I don't I'm not sure even what equipment to use if you have a significant amount. It's not like we can reuse that material in most cases. So I guess I'm just introducing you to this problem you might not have been aware of.
One of the
So
things,
the gravel is from the road?
Yes.
Somehow the road crew or the driving or what causes the
Oh,
gravel?
from storms, erosion.
Okay, storms.
Yeah, I mean, I see it driving around, there's
Yeah.
a few spots, you know, on the road to Adamant from County Road there.
Yeah.
Way down in the woods and.
Yeah.
You see it all.
Yeah.
Pretty frequently. And I can see if it's,
There's still some from 2023 that's very
Yeah.
visible.
yeah. It's an interesting.
so what, you know, stood out to me, in this particular topic is that, we've got a very wide range of incidences, you know, there's a spectrum of issues, so you have something like Elmsley Road, where you've got a huge volume of material, and that is a pretty big burden for any property owner to have to absorb. And then you had what happened last year over on Worcester Road, where a large volume of material is moving across a residence yard. And so, you know, I think my personal opinion on the matter is that that's town infrastructure, and we're property owners who have a certain responsibility to try to reclaim or make a good effort to reclaim some of that material. Whether or not we put it back into use is a huge question. It probably can't be, but I don't think we can probably set a policy for whether we do or we don't every single time there's a request, depending on the scale. And so I think one of the things that maybe we could consider doing is tracking the requests and noting the areas, for one, to make sure that we're documenting where there may be recurring perennial issues of road erosion that may need a better construction standard to avoid those types of erosions from continuing to happen, but also so that we can probably set an idea of like what the scale of the problem is relative to the requests, and how that could potentially inform a policy of some sort. You know, I don't want to spin up a policy without having better information about it and knowing the scale, but I'm also, that's just my single position.
Just
so.
thinking out loud, I'm just wondering what other doors that opens.
Right.
You know, when you raise the road, I have to bring in a load of gravel so I can get down to my driveway. And that happens, we have to do that every couple of years because they keep raising the road. Do you want to pay for that? I mean, I'm not sure where it stops. I think it would take some careful thought
Yeah,
as to what's actually we're doing.
yeah,
We start doing that sort of thing.
that's my concern.
Yeah.
And I think while it came up, there was some question about culverts as well. That's a little less gray for me, because anybody who has a curb cut with a culvert, they own that culvert and the responsibility for maintaining it, et cetera, but we have kind of a habit of performing some of that maintenance or clearing out, and that's a bit of a gray area. Or, you know, we have other town-owned culverts that are adjacent to other culverts that aren't town-owned, and so I think there's kind of a long list of these storm water perennial maintenance issues that are going to become more frequent and more problematic. So at the very least, I think we need to probably start tracking the requests as they're coming in, so that we can get a better idea of where they're happening and what the causes are, or at least do some analysis about what the root causes are. I would add water bars to that. Because as we grade the roads more frequently, those water bars and the materials associated with them tend to pile up too. So and that's now all silty material that will end up running down to property owners' land.
I think I counted 6 or 7 months, those bars from top of my hill, all the way down by his property, down by Ron Thompson. You know, just going into the door, you had no reason, you know, to just. And I have a lot of gravel going into the big field down there, across my garage. Should have, I don't mind it, I just go over the tractor and scoop it up and put it where I want it.
All right, you're hired.
Free gravel.
And we didn't charge you that.
Yeah.
Oh, you charge me.
Well, I appreciate that not being a concern for you. I can imagine that there are others who are less well equipped.
You know, who took the end of the road off? Up on Leggett Ridge.
I'm not aware of any.
I don't know that.
We come out Tucker Road,
Yeah,
yeah, and you join Leggett Ridge. Somebody took that off that corner.
It wasn't me.
Well, I know you ain't gonna do it. But you come right around the corner, you don't even have to stop now. You could come from Tucker Road to Leggett Ridge Road, down the other way, and I think maybe Seth Gardner went down. That's what I'm thinking. Because he comes around there with his big trucks and puts manure and draws hay. The trucks are hard to turn on that corner. You see what I'm saying to you?
Mhm.
And I've been blaming it on the town, but
I think maybe you brought this up in the last meeting and I'm not aware of that particular issue, but that we can send somebody out to take a look at it, to see what.
what we really ought to take a look at. You gotta talk about the damn dam. We wanna talk about right in front of his house. They come over that hill, 90 miles an hour, and they hit that hill in the spring of the year. And Jesus, you'll see a dive just like that, up this way, sometimes they're airborne, right? Huh? You gotta speak up, you won't get anything around. You know, they got kids running around there, and they can't even mow the damn lawn, they run everything went onto this road. I want to tip it towards the old road, grade it. Talk to you about that, right? Grade it towards that old ditch, all goes there, not to the houses. Not to Ron Compton's, not to his house, not to the other house, I don't know who lives there, out by Tass's house, you know?
We can try to put that on the list, but there are standards for constructing the roads with crowns. I don't know that we can just tip them one way or the
Well,
other.
I'm telling you, they asked me what happened, and I'm telling you what happened. My grandfather, and Albert George, and all the old farmers around there couldn't make, they call it Martin Road, it used to be Martin Road, somebody changed it. And you'll see it on the right-hand side. Yeah, they couldn't come up through there with a team of horses. So they all got together and they took a stove boat, God, they didn't have bucket loaders either. They loaded it on the stove boat, drove down there and they tipped it over. Well, I think the water's running right through all those flat rocks and stuff, you know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah,
Not gravel, not just, that's what's going on in his door. But you know why that, coming down there, no, you know, cause I've seen you go by. And there's, it's a hump in the road right there in the spring of the year, frost. And man, you come out the other side and you're going by his house and boom, you hit the other one and you're airborne.
all right, well, I'm hearing that we've got a section of road to take a look at. I'm sorry, what was your name? Jordan, so good to meet you. Were you primarily wanting to speak to the road speed issue?
Both the condition
And the condition? So were there specific conditions of the road that you wanted to kind of bring up and register?
There was a bunch of erosion on 780.
Yeah.
When that hill starts going up, that road kind of, it went mostly into my yard. And when they filled it up, it's gonna be the same thing that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
After a couple more rains. So,
Are you in the left going down?
Yeah.
On the left-hand side going down there?
yeah.
Okay.
He's got water, I mean, things in front of his garage for the water to run in.
Oh, yeah, so our driveway has been washed off.
Yeah. I got that done too, to my garage.
So it'd probably be worth taking a look at the grading of the road in that particular area, so that we might want to consider doing something to catch or divert the water so that it's not going into into the yard, for one.
It's going into my field right there before it gets to its yard. Isn't it? Huh? Yeah, we can't even go in there with tractors or anything, we're stuck, I pulled Seth Gardner around there, it's five of them are running right into that corner. No, it's feed we have to throw away or do work with, you know, farm, what the hell?
I will say this, if I can, just anecdotally, you mentioned there's a spring underneath that road. It's every spring, and it's a problem. My car, I have a Corolla. And I go really slow down that hill, because I got two-wheel drive. And I was slowing down real slow, and almost in front of Lee's house, and I almost made it. And all of a sudden, it just dropped, it goes bang, not seriously, it wasn't that fast.
Yeah.
And then I hood wouldn't shut right, so I enjoyed it for a couple months, and they tried to change the latch. Turned out it was that bang bent my radius, so now it's gonna finally get the De Beers auto repair. I got a collision, but it's gonna cost about $2,500 to fix. But that road could be, that area is always a problem, even in the spring, and I think the under base of it is just bad. Because it's always about fields, you know, so it is.
Barbara?
I just want you to note that Craig said something in the chat line.
I did not see that. Must be referring to the gravel.
He was, yeah.
Can you read it? I can't see it. but-
I would seem that a medium-sized tractor with a bucket loader and a York rake, would work for removing the gravel.
Oh, that's on someone's lawn.
So I think he was just a comment towards, material removal from folks' yards, which, I don't disagree with that assessment at all, but, that we kind of need to keep track of how we're employing, the use of that and when, and take that under consideration, and what are we doing with the material? But I do think that we need to take a closer look at the segment of Lightning Ridge then, to consider. I mean, this is in part why I think it's important that we start tracking, when we're having instances of material ending up on personal property, and getting a sense of what the scale is, and then working on what the fixes are gonna be. The road bed is
You gotta hire somebody to do it, and I said, the hell with that, I talked to him today, let the town do it.
Well, I can't make that decision without having better information and knowing what the scale of the problem is,
Mine's
because,
pretty good.
so. Do we need to discuss that any further?
No.
I just wanted to say something about it. I lived on Lightning Ridge for 39 years, and Mike Guerin, who was there since the 1970s, he always said that right on that section, very close to your house, there's springs in the road. And there are different times of the year when you can just go up the road and it's okay, it's nicely graded. But starting right there, you'll see wet streaks that go down. So those springs that are in the road lead to this water problem that's going out onto Doug's field. We've had so much rain and out onto your lawn. And then in the spring, all heck breaks loose and you get the clay boils but it's a deeper problem. Like you said, there's probably some big rocks in there, but I've lived there 39 years and it's every year we get those big, there's a big water problem. Yeah, there's a big water problem.
I mean,
in that road.
I don't disagree,
Yeah.
my knowledge of civil infrastructure is probably better than most, but limited, by any stretch of the imagination. So, to me, they're kind of somewhat two separate problems. I think we need a better kind of accounting of where these perennial problem areas are. And that's where we're gonna have to have somebody come out to do a more specific design for how to repair these segments of roads. And we need to have a budget for doing it. We can't afford to just continue to throw material on top of things that are problem areas that are gonna suck up the material.
That's what we're doing now.
Well, I know, and some of that is out of necessity, for sure. We need to make sure that the roads are passable, but we also need to have a budget and a plan for what segments of road get more comprehensive fix. I mean, I'll stop talking, but.
So we do, locate repeat areas throughout the year, usually with drainage problems and clay boils, because clay boils come back every year, and that's because there's moisture in the road and there's clay in the base. So what we do is what's known as a box cut, where we essentially take a point and dig down 4 feet, remove all the material to whatever length it needs to be done to the other end of the box, and then actually rebuild the structure of the road. We've done that before. We did it on Moscow Woods Road. I've gotten grants for those kind of things. We've done it on the Worcester Road. We did it on the Worcester Road, and there's never been a problem with mud season ever since we did it almost 10 years ago. So essentially, it's something we can do, and if we have to look at that section to rebuild it, we can certainly do it, and it would be part of the town budget. It's just road crew work, and it would be a project that they would have to do under the regular budget.
Yeah.
If it's on a class 2 road, I don't know if Lightning Ridge is class 2 or not. There are grants available on class 2, so since it's not class 2, it would have to be done by the town. There'd be no grant monies for it.
Tegan?
There's another message, that's all I want to say.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Thanks, Rose.
Craig said thanks for,
Go to
So we're coming up on budget season, and I guess as part of the road crew or the highway department budget, it would be good to, I guess, get an accounting of what projects are on the purview for that scope of work, both from an hourly perspective and a materials perspective, but.
Yeah, agreed.
I
Yeah, the
think-
last thing I wanted to say about, just the update on the highway department is the list that you were referring to is really, really long right now. It'll be a push to get all the grant and aid work that we committed to doing this year done, and it needs to be done this month. We've still got FEMA cleanup, and then there are quite a few culverts that need to be replaced and or unclogged around town, and it's really, and we're getting more requests all the time, so it's pretty daunting. And then in terms of major projects, we're already committed to the Kent Hill Road French mattress project. Toby and I met with residents on Bliss Pond Road for the culvert that washed out in 23 and 24. I mean, clearly something needs to be done there. There's the Adamant Village and the Haggett Road, that culvert. And then Martin Road would also be near the top of the list. So there's a lot, and we should and will consider it in the budgeting, but it's going to be a prioritization exercise to some degree.
Can we hire some of this work done maybe, or?
Well, I mean, I think that's what, that begs the question, and part of the reason I think that we need a better accounting of what the hours are for these projects is like, we really need to have a sit down with the road crew and have a kind of a heart-to-heart on like what makes sense for the road crew to do and what makes sense to put out to bid, even if they are more road crew related maintenance issues. If it's a certain scope of work per year and we need to budget for putting them out to bid. Anecdotally, I think about the work that was done last summer, and seeing how those roads that saw significant reconstruction responded to other flood events. Certainly there were culverts that were kind of repeat offenders, but for the most part, those roads held up a lot better than the roads that did not see reconstruction activity. So I think there's plenty of reason for or rationale for putting a maintenance budget in the highway department's budget for hiring out a certain amount of work every year to try to get some of these perennial issues off. And, I think Max Gray Road would be, another one that, through various mud seasons, now that we have several of them, really became an issue of passage and safe passage or emergency passage. And we can't really afford to kind of work through these slowly. We need all of them fixed.
Well, and we're also down a staff number as well on the highway department, so essentially that limits the scope of what is getting done.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the question is, if we hire an outside contractor to do 2 or 3 culverts, and that's going to be a $5,000 or $6,000, does it have to go out to bid? Is that low enough in the scale where we can just bring a contractor in and say, please do this? And not have to go through let's wait and see and get 3 bids, because we're not gonna get 3 bids right away. it's one of those things that we need to know what the threshold might be, and we can look at what the cost for replacing a culvert or upsizing a culvert is, and come to you and say, this is something that we can contract and get done, but we need to understand, what's the threshold of what we can spend to a contractor.
I think that's just a matter of revising or reviewing the purchasing policy. That's pretty easily done, and then setting those thresholds.
Because I think we can find excavation companies that will who know how to put a culvert in.
Definitely.
And we can supervise. So if that's your intent, then we'll make we can start making a list of people to give us quotes on doing culvert work. I mean, there's over 600 culverts in town.
Yeah.
And probably 60 or 70 of them need attention in some way, shape, or form.
Has Carly been designated as a purchasing agent? If so, he can make purchases of up to $5,000 without prior to provided in the budget.
Yes.
Yeah, so, provided they're in the budget, so I think that's kind of the big thing, is we're gonna have to start putting those things in
But
there.
in this case, the purchase would just be for labor because we would have to supply the culvert and material anyway, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, if we were doing it on our own, yeah.
Yeah.
And between 5 and 25, you don't need the 2 bids. It's advisable, but it's not required according to our purchasing policy unless federal funding comes into play and then things get a little more sticky.
Well, they also have the prior approval of the select board.
Yeah.
Right. So if we get someone who can do 3 culverts on one road and it's gonna be $7,500, we'll come to you before he comes and get your permission to go ahead. And if it's just 1 culvert on a road and it's less than 5,000, we'll just keep moving along and get those problems taken care of.
Sounds like a plan to me.
I can't see how it costs so much. If we got the excavator, we come in there, put some signs up, get in there, start digging, put the dirt here, put the culvert in. Come in with an excavator or whatever, backhoe, push it back in, and you're home free.
I think it's the scale of work, Doug, that is the issue. It's not the cost. We have a lot of these to do, and we've got clay boils that need to be addressed, and we gotta.
If you can run an excavator, how long is it gonna take you to dig that road up?
I'm not gonna, but Doug, we gotta stay on task. We're covering a lot of ground here. I appreciate the input, but we're gonna move.
And we're catching up on 2 years of floods.
We're catching up on 2 years of floods, and frankly, I'm pretty impressed with how much work is getting done and how passable the roads are relative to other towns. So with that, thank you for the input. We're gonna move on to the fiscal year 2026
May I ask a
budget.
question?
Yeah.
Carly's report.
Yeah.
Having had 20 tires recently dumped on my property, I'm just interested in your last statement there. We do not have the capacity to complete the tire pickup events that we received grant funds for.
So remember, Ann Tulin wrote a grant for the Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District to host a tire event, a pickup event where people could drop off tires and then and pay. Her vision was they would pay a certain amount. We would use that money to seed next year's tire event and keep it going in perpetuity. And that was, we were gonna do, originally the plan was to do 2 days of tire drop-offs. I just don't see how we're gonna get that done this fall.
Okay.
They're gonna be Saturdays. I think one in August, one in September.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. 2026 budget. Kari, do you have a list of FY 2026 highway department priorities?
Yeah, well, I think I rattled through a number of those. I just wanted to share that some concerns beyond that staffing level, and we definitely need to get another full-time person hired if possible. There, constant concerns about equipment, aging equipment. The CV truck is definitely one that's been problematic. And then one issue that was surprised me that I wasn't aware of was there are feelings about not receiving a bonus this past year. And apparently there was some, tradition of highway department, maybe all town employees receiving a bonus around the holidays. And I know that, sorry?
I think it was just highway, I've seen it.
Yeah,
in select
just
board.
highway.
Yeah, we're with all
No,
employees.
okay.
And when I asked about it a little bit more, apparently it was part of the negotiations for the labor contract, that there was discussions about potentially having a bonus, and it just didn't work its way into the final contract. But just so you're aware, that is something that lingers. There are feelings about that. That's sort of it. I don't think I have anything else to really report on behalf of the highway department. So I did put a first draft of the budget worksheet in there. All I've really done is plugged in the capital items that we talked about last time we met. Those pieces of equipment or bonds that we're already committed to. Except for technology, I didn't put that in because we need to have the discussion about moving to the cloud and how that affects purchasing a server in the future. So
Is that under highway? Excuse me.
the budget, there's a budget subfolder, I believe. And
Under highway?
Categories, I noticed. You take the things that we usually have out separate, as separate warnings, and you kind of put them in.
oh, that's how the budget is organized.
It's different from how
There's-
it's organized.
Those are, they're,
Here.
it is? Oh, yeah, because they're warned separately in there.
They're warned separately.
But you're talking about the social service appropriations, funding,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's a little confusing to me. The
Okay.
intent is to pull them out again, right? Not to,
And
not to move.
anything that the town, the voters are gonna vote on as a separate matter, will be pulled out in that format,
Okay.
in the town report. So that will be clear, but in our budget, all of those items fall under general government, and so that's.
No, I understand that. I just wanted to be sure you weren't intending to not have them voted on separately.
Yeah, no, I wasn't intending to do anything differently in that regard from what we've done.
Also, the cemetery kind of gets buried because it's, I forget where you put it, but instead of being a separate item and having their own category.
That's just the formatting of, that's how we have our accounting software set up. So when you ask it to print next year's budget, it comes out just in the way that it's currently formatted.
I see.
Which is the way that I'm reporting to you how we're doing in our budget status reports. How they're approved is somewhat different from the format of accounting. So it's just a very early start to this budgeting process, but what I would recommend is we're gonna discuss the calendar, but starting to invite in the committees and the staff members that you want to hear from in terms of what might be different this next year. And then I can also start filling in some of the gaps in terms of history and trend, and what I know about plan changes as an approach. So it was basically what you did last year, but you'll have me to help.
Were there other specific questions about the comparison of the budget and the items that are in the spreadsheet? Because then I think we should probably have a conversation about the timeline of looking at various committees.
I did have one specific question. I noticed you said the highway grants administrator is gone. I have to look.
No, the operations manager is gone.
Okay. It looked
Toby's
like-
still with
I'm
us.
still here.
I'm still breathing.
No, I'm still breathing. I've just been reclassified.
Yeah.
Been moved to another side of the road.
It said highway grants administrator, but it's, okay, I just wanted if something had happened.
That's certainly not what I meant.
He doesn't need mouth
If I said that, it's not what I meant. The operations managers, there's a number of positions in the highway department that.
I understand
in
that.
flux,
I understood that.
so.
No, you still got me, damn it.
I didn't get a chance to look at this. This came in after I looked at everything, so
You'll see a lot in the coming months.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big part for certainly for me was, it was getting a sense of where we're gonna see increases in servicing of debt and expenses, and then feedback on how we might want to make adjustments to the capital budget for the road crew relative to what they've expressed their needs are, and those budgets plus material. I mean, I think there's gonna be a huge dialogue around the highway department relative to these maintenance projects that we know needs to get addressed sooner than later, and we currently likely don't have the funds represented in the material costs in the last couple of years of budget, and we also don't have any contractor expense in there if we wanted to start budgeting and allocating funds for that. I mean,
Well, but just understand by not having that extra person salary, that frees up a lot of funds that's in the budget that it can be converted to a contractor. It's just not in the line item.
yeah,
So if you have one salary that doesn't show up for a whole year, that's a lot of money that you can spend on contractors without changing anything in the bottom line.
yeah.
Salary and benefits.
Yeah, salary and benefits.
All right, the gravel, it was 80,000 and we spent 142. Now, is some of that 142 covered by FEMA?
It doesn't include FEMA gravel.
It doesn't.
That was
It's a terrible.
separate.
Okay, wow.
We had we had that mud season all winter long.
Right.
We were spending tremendous amounts on.
So our budget went down for that, but we should have probably put it up. Yeah, okay.
Well, and again,
Well,
if you keep having storms that are not FEMA storms, we're gonna have erosion and gonna need more material than normal.
And then you're gonna have people asking to move the gravel out of their yard.
Yeah, I think it's very unusual to be purchasing any gravel really in the winter months. The quarries actually shut down, but last year they were allowed to maintain. And we really needed them in December, January, and February.
Yeah.
And it may be that we wanna stockpile some prior to the winter and just have it on site so that we don't have to run into the situation where we don't have any gravel.
Yes.
For those episodes.
I mean, I think stockpiling is a huge conversation to be had. I mean, we have limited space to do it. But I don't think there's any question that we would see a price advantage to buying it when there isn't as much demand and trying to keep it on hand for when we need it. And may not have access to it, or when access to it would be expensive.
Well, just the other thing is, prior to the 23 storm, gravel was $12 a yard, in a cubic yard, and now it's up to $17 or $18 a cubic yard. So there was a huge increase because of the demand and the supply issue for the storm, and it never went back down. It stayed there, so the budget just had to go up because of the price change due to the circumstances we're dealing with now.
Probably one of the other things that we might want to take a closer look at, I guess, would be the labor contract. I know during negotiations, our ability to contract certain scopes of work out to contractors can kind of run afoul with the union.
It's a sensitive issue.
It's a pretty sensitive issue. It was a good dialogue. It didn't end up being too much of a point of contention, but we might want to revisit that if we want to get a little bit more.
It's come up.
Flexible about what we're contracting out, or how we approve that internally.
Yeah, and again, so our inability to have a full staff is driving the
Absolutely.
driving the need, and the union has to understand that. And we're doing everything we can to find road crew members, and everybody is every town in Vermont is in the same situation.
Yeah,
There's gotta be flexibility.
Absolutely. I mean, that was largely the point that was being made during negotiations, is that it's just the reality. Like, if we're out advertising and we still can't fill the roles that we need to perform the work, the work still needs to be done. And they understood, my guess is we're still a little short on having that covered, in language. Whether that's a side agreement.
I don't think we wanna make any assumptions, we wanna be respectful about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We don't wanna fight about it.
No. So do we want to have a short dialogue about timelines relative to Ann's budget timeline that was used the last time around?
Barbara?
Yeah, Barbara, do you have a
I do
comment in the
a
meantime?
request. On the timeline, Kellogg Hubbard is scheduled for November the 11th, select board meeting, and the executive director cannot make that date. So he either has requested to be on your October schedule or November 25th select board meeting.
Already contacted these people?
No, he contacted me.
So does anybody have questions or concerns about the timeline and running with that for a survey right now? Trying to run through that again. I mean, we spent a fair amount of time with Sandra in the early days last year. A lot of that was, from my recollection, as much a training about budget and how budgets affect tax rates, and how we should expect to move through the budgeting process, which may not be as necessary, but I certainly don't want to speak for Bill or Chris about kind of breezing over some of that initial dialogue. But that's kind of what the subtext is there, relative to Sandra's presence. That was the treasurer coming in and.
Right, and this was a schedule for a select board on which every single person had not done it before.
That's right.
And now we have, the majority has done it before, and I feel like we don't, for myself personally, I feel like I don't want to slow it down, and I will ask questions. And I feel that you three can answer them.
And Kari's here at all the meetings.
And you didn't
Our
start.
told you, we didn't have Kari, we didn't, and Kari is the new.
I joined in November, so
Right.
some of it was already underway.
And so that will
Yeah.
also make things.
Yeah.
More professional.
Yeah, it's also grounded us a little more in our budget and our tracking throughout the year, which
Right.
before we didn't have a lot of sight in, largely because of experience, or lack thereof. But, now having gone through it, I can speak for myself, it's largely looking at the budget from years prior, and getting a good idea of what's driving the costs in each one of those, which certainly I have a much better sense of. So, I think that there's good reason, I guess, to start meeting with individual committees or getting feedback from departments in particular, about what they see prices or costs being driven by, and starting to get some early input on where we might be. My assumption is that this is gonna be a very difficult year of weighing where we may continue to need to make cuts or think about how we're appropriating things relative to priorities. Is that a fair characterization? So I think the sooner that we can kind of get input from various departments on what will be driving costs in those areas, the more we can work through that dialogue. Are there any? It's hard to imagine that there are any that are too soon to meet with.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm really curious to hear from the fire departments because that's such a large number, but I don't think they'll be ready until
Right.
December.
They won't be ready, neither, I mean, there are lots that won't be able to give us anything until December, the police won't.
Right.
So I think we start with our own committees.
With our own
just
committees.
because-
Yeah,
And you need to give them time to meet and think about it. Some of them, well, as I recall, I broke them out, some of them it's pretty simple, and those are the ones we put on first. Like the listers.
Mhm.
They could probably have a quick meeting and tell us what they want and so on, the zoning administrator. The committees need a little more time to have a meeting and talk about what they want.
well, and the other big kind of structural changes that last time we went through it, we were kind of giving each other, assignments, to, converse with any of these, as, I guess, to act as like budget liaisons, but I think that was also largely an educational exercise, and I don't know that we necessarily need to do that this time, if we can just have a schedule, since we're gonna start it early, if we can just schedule them to come in and have a conversation with us about what they expect their costs or requests to be, that we don't necessarily need liaisons for each of the individual budget items. Is that fair? Does anybody feel differently about that? Do you want any personal homework, Phil? I certainly can't handle personal homework at this point, so.
The issue is, our only staff was Barbara.
Right.
I didn't want to make Barbara do all this work, so we took on bunches of it.
Right.
Now we've had a little more help, I think, and we've done it before, so I think staff can
Okay.
handle.
I'm a deer in the headlights here, so you need something done, let me know.
So I'm hearing we should start inviting in.
I think we should start inviting in, and probably start early with maybe some of the quote unquote easier ones, I guess, the ones that will have a better view on what their requests could be, now. I guess probably,
Invite them now for, say, October.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's hard to imagine trying to start it by the next meeting, but by October, I think we should probably be able to get the first two.
A month anyway, so.
Right.
A lot of them won't meet again
Until after this year. All right.
We have some people committed to next meeting. There's a list there, right now I'm not finding it, but the listers, for example. And the zoning administrator, where's the?
You have the cemetery commission, DRB.
Get a page down a little
In
bit.
the very early list, the swim committee, yeah. It does say town clerk, I don't know. But, you could probably do a budget pretty quickly, right?
in 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So there are some that we could handle next week, just to knock some of them off, I think. And they can tell us if they can't do it by then.
So how many do we think that we could probably cover in a meeting? That's my first question, and then.
Well, this is how we did it last year. On
Right.
October 9th, we had the town clerk, the listers, the zoning administrator, the DRB, the swim committee, and the cemetery commission. And I believe they all came in and they all had some things.
I think the cemetery commission wasn't ready. She came, but then she wasn't
Yeah,
ready.
it took a
Yeah,
while
we
for us to
scheduled
get that in.
Okay. And we could call some of the others and ask them if they're having a meeting and put these had a budget, and they can tell us yes or no.
It would also depend on how much else you all have on your agenda that day.
Well, so I'm wondering if we tentatively target like 3 or 4 slots for every agenda. And then Barbara, if you have the bandwidth to maybe contact each of these folks in the next week, basically to say, you know, how soon do you think that you'd be able to? And anybody who maybe feels like they could potentially work into the next meeting, we'll try to get 2 or 3 maybe into the next meeting, but then try to in earnest get
And
folks
so at the
scheduled.
moment, you're just talking about our own municipal boards.
All
committees,
administrative,
commissions.
yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah, we can
Please.
do that this week.
So The way I built this last year was I worked backwards, and maybe you just wanna do that for a minute. And you see, we're gonna have one more meeting in September, 2 in October, and we kind of wanna be having all this input by November, because then we're gonna have to start massaging it, and that takes several meetings.
Right.
And we're not gonna be able to do it at Christmas, so it would be good to work toward finalizing it before Christmas.
And the Monday, November 25th, just is the week of Thanksgiving, so I just want to be sure you guys are all going to plan on having a meeting that night.
So just thinking about it that way, it would be good to knock out a whole bunch at the next meeting, if we possibly can. You know, keep plugging on.
Can I ask you, do you want to hear from committees that don't request any changes and just want status quo in their
You
budget?
don't need to. One of the things I liked about what we did last time was it gave us a chance to have a conversation about what they were doing, what their priorities are.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and I also remember, not finalizing until after, we were toward the end of January, beginning of February. Yeah.
December 11th.
Yeah,
But then the police, changed their budget at the last minute. and
The
all this.
county was really late, I remember.
Yeah, they were all late, so it turned out we had to wait until January, but even aiming to have it done before Christmas, we still were scrambling in January,
Yeah,
as I recall.
we had an extra meeting and
Yeah.
the hard decisions I feel like were made in December. You're popular.
I don't give out my cell number, so if it rings, it's junk. So you just hit the button.
Okay, so we'll start working on
And
this.
why don't I move color covered up to October, since more people like to go later, and he offered October.
Sure.
Okay, I'll.
September 23rd is available too.
Okay.
yeah.
You can be first.
On top of Barbara's comment, I think I saw we have a full week in November off the school district. So that might affect who's in town on the 25th if school is out that whole week. I might not be here. I might have to zoom in first.
Okay. All right, well, that sounds like a rough plan. I think for the next couple of meetings at least, we'll start to get some input on maybe when folks will feel prepared to meet. And I'm lukewarm, I think, on trying to front load it. I feel like that makes us, that really locks us into pretty long meetings in the near future, and then that
Do it
turns into
now or
long
do it in
meetings.
January.
Yeah. That is fair. So that's fine with me. So we'll try to knock as many off as we can as they feel prepared, and count on seeing a representative from each one of them if they can, just to check in with them to see what they've been up to this year and maybe what they see for needs in the year to come. I guess I would maybe put it on their radar that maybe we might need to meet with folks more than once if we need to get creative about cuts. I mean, yes, no. And some of the bigger ticket items that we're gonna be looking at later in the process are gonna be, highway department budgets and emergency services, and those are going to be somewhat inflexible negotiations around what we need. So if we are in a position where we're having to anticipate cuts, we're going to be revisiting things that we see early in the process and circling back on some of those conversations after some of those more substantial inputs are coming in later in the process. So we may need to call folks back in as we weigh those.
Yeah.
Or get feedback.
I would suggest that, we're not going to recommend their proposal, then we'll let them know that and then invite them to come back if they really don't want to.
Well, that's what we did. Once we had everything on the table, we decided what our priorities were.
Right.
And then we made cuts accordingly, and I remember calling all those people, calling the chair of the Conservation Commission and explaining, here's what we've done and here's why.
Yep.
And they were pretty accepting.
Without coming in for a meeting.
That's right. I just called them and told them personally, and they reported to their.
Do you want this invitation to start lining up these appointments with the select board to be, bring your wish list, but then also bring a realistic?
That's what we discussed last year. What is your bare bones must-have budget? And then if you could sort of rank going up, that's what we discussed, so we wouldn't have to worry too much about calling people back and saying, oh, which one do you want? If we cut this thing, is that worse?
I would say, given the tenor of the dialogue around budgets in the last year to 2 years, it would be hard to even consider wish lists. And so I would hope that they would be coming in with what they feel their bare bones are. But you know, I guess, yeah, does anybody disagree?
I think it's more just, sometimes I was surprised by what people found necessary and what they found wish listy, and I didn't think, it wasn't always what I assumed they would have found, so sometimes it's nice to have their perspective.
I mean, that's fair. I think something I've been kind of ruminating on would be like, if there are wish list type things, what are maybe some mechanisms or ways that we feel like the town could support them having those things supported through fundraising or other initiatives? You know, are there community members in the town that could help support those things?
I would suggest you set the
Grant
town.
writing, I mean.
Yeah, but in terms of what to communicate, I would suggest setting the tone by saying, we anticipate there's gonna be very challenging.
Yeah.
If you are going to be proposing something that's a significant increase, be prepared to defend it. Tell us what the return on investment is.
But perhaps we can also ask for their wish list and then help guide them, because you guys have approved that groups can start doing fundraising on their own. So that could be a conversation that we can have with them when they come in. But then also, maybe if we track this year after year, if we see that this particular item has been on the conservation wish list for 4 years now,
Yeah.
maybe in year 5, we really want to give it serious consideration. So I like the idea of asking for their bare bones. What do you really need for this next fiscal year? What's your wish list? And then manage their expectations from there.
Okay. Barbara, you have a call list then?
I do.
All right.
So I just want to make sure I understand. For me, it's right now, it's just our own board committees and commissions and color cover. No other external other than color cover, because he's reached out to me.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other conversation about budgets or timelines?
That's it.
Oh, yeah, there's one thing we have to remember, which is all the social services things. The town has asked us to appoint a committee to do that.
Oh.
Okay, so we.
They didn't ask this past year.
No, but they asked us 2 years ago and we didn't do it. So I think we better do it. I know you like to do it, Barbara, but I do think the town wants us to do it.
By the town, you're talking about the voters?
Yeah,
Town
2
meeting.
years ago at town meeting, they requested that we, and it was brought up at town meeting again. Somebody said, hey, why did you do it? We asked you to do it. So I feel that we're committed, that we have to do this. You can be on. So, you should be on. Okay. In the past, it's been, I don't know, it's usually a select board member and then a few community members.
I was on it for a number of years.
Were you with that? Okay.
I need more context.
So there used to be a committee, you're saying?
Right,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
basically all the social service agencies put in their requests, and we
Right.
used to have a committee that would meet just 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Maybe just
Well,
one.
the deadline for submission is December 1st. So there's not a whole lot of time to make 2 or 3 times through the month of December. And how are you going to form this committee? Are we gonna reach out and invite people? It's gonna be an open call on Front Porch Forum? How are you looking to?
And what is the mission? Are you gonna vet these proposals or are you going to call for more?
No, what it was sort of to make the recommendation to the select board on what ends up in the warning. And most of the time, it was what came in, but occasionally there'd be a time where
I see.
one
There's a
agency
question.
has to triple their budget. And that committee sort of evaluates before making a recommendation to the select board.
And then you can answer if it comes up at town meeting and they don't have a representative present, why did this happen?
So how about one select board member, a staff member and a resident, and just quick?
I don't remember the makeup of the former committees, do you, Jamie?
I don't either. They were.
They haven't met since I started working here.
Oh.
There was one year, the chair screwed everything up and it ended up being a fiasco. And we never went back.
It's a lot, yeah.
I think smaller might be better in this, it's like, I think 3 is
Right.
probably fine, because it's more information gathering than decision making.
Right.
Last year's proposals were almost identical to the year prior.
Right.
And the year before that, they were all identical. The big change was Old West Church because it was their 200th or 250th anniversary. And everything else was like almost spot on.
So I remember Gus was on it when I was on, he may remember what the makeup of the committee
Yeah.
was.
And they mostly wanted to know how many people are served. Are there any, people from Calais on their boards? Have they asked other area towns or are we just being singled out? Cause they know Calais is
So
really.
the
good with
problem
their
is
money.
that the application has been already on the website, people have already submitted, and we didn't ask all those questions. We'd have to go back to them with a revised application now.
Would you like me to ask Gus to tell me how they used to do it?
I mean, I think I think at the very least, we're gonna need like a kind of a proposal for the number, the makeup, and what the committee is gonna be. And then, so that's gonna form a charge that we'll be able to make a decision about, and then if we form it this year, then the extent of what they're gonna be able to consider are the applications for this year, without probably asking too many other follow-up questions. But it would be a good, I guess, dry run at presenting that list as a body, or a recommendation, relative to what those requests are. Do you think you can have one for next meeting for
Yeah.
us to try to form?
Yeah.
Okay, can it be as few as 3? For a committee?
I think the idea was to have a bit of more community involvement. Let me ask Gus about that, but I'm guessing that whoever it is that brought it up at the last town meeting wants to be on the committee. I don't know.
Well, it may have been Matt Gardner Morse,
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah, or it could have been Barry Bernstein or Craig Lyon. Those are the 3 people that come to my mind. And I think it's Matt Gardner Morse.
Make them go.
So let's leave it at that, and we're running a little behind schedule, and so I was thinking that maybe we do the historic marker
Sure.
agenda item. Just be kind of sensitive to time for folks who are here, and then we'll circle back on the East Montpelier.
Sounds good.
So we've got a proposal for a roadside historic marker. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've got proposed?
Yeah, so my name's Colton Teller, I live here in Calais, I'm a junior at U32, and I'm a member of the Vermont Civil War Hemlocks, which is a living history group here in Vermont. And just recently, I was appointed to the American Battlefield Trust Youth Leadership Team. And they're a nonprofit in Washington DC that goes around preserving battlefields in the United States, our hallowed ground. And I'm one of 10 high school students from across the country, and I got appointed to represent the state of Vermont. And as a part of the program, I had to come up with a visitation, education, or just a visitation education for, inspiration project, basically. And I've reached out to the Vermont Division for Historic Preservation to get some ideas, and I realized that the hall, the Memorial Hall, which it was, originally named for the Stowe family, Stowe Post 29, which was in memory of this, William Stowe, who was the first soldier from Calais to enlist, and he was killed at the Battle of the Wilderness in 1864. And I realized that the hall didn't have a marker, and it's the last wooden GAR hall in Vermont. And so I thought it would be fitting to get one there eventually. And I've been working with both the Division for Historic Preservation and the hall on authoring the sign. And the state will actually pay for the sign after 8 months, so no cost to the town or anything. And but I just yesterday, the Division for Historic Preservation and the hall approved what we had written together, so I believe it's the one on the agenda has changed.
Cool, so the application for the marker was accepted by, Historic Preservation, and then you said it was 8 months, they end
It'll
up
take
kind
8
of
months to get it-
furnishing a sign.
Yeah, to get it, all put together and then installed. We still haven't, I still have to do a little bit of work to find with the hall and the Historic Preservation Trust to find, an exact location of where we're gonna put it. Bill, I know Mary told me you're on the association. I don't know if you had any ideas about.
This said the proposed text was edited 8/13. You said it's changed after that, or this is the final?
The one I had sent has changed in the last couple of days. And
So we're not looking at the final here.
No,
Okay,
I just barely sent it to Kari and Keegan.
okay.
When you say the state will pay for it, will they pay for the actual sign, the materials and making it and installation?
Correct.
So there's no cost to the
No
town
cost
at
to the
all?
town.
Thank you.
I imagine we would have the road crew, install it, or do they have, yeah?
Laura hasn't directly told me about that yet, but, and then once it is possibly installed, I was, the Hemlocks, we do a lot of events like dedications and parades and such, and, I was hoping to do a dedication ceremony if approved with the Hemlocks and the, Sons of Union Veterans as well as the Hawks.
We don't know them all, do we?
Well, it's, I guess that's my next question. It's a little unique in that it's not a town, it's not a town facility, and it's on a class 4 road, so I don't know what scope we have for approving the placement of it. It might need some approval from the, or at least the placement of it, if it's gonna be placed on property of the hall.
Yeah, we don't, do they want it out by the road?
Yeah.
Or where it goes in, or is it by the hall?
That's
What was your thought?
That's what I mean. For me, as a visual standpoint, it'd be best near the hall, but I don't really know
Okay.
where.
The state needs to come up with 2 signs. It needs to have a turn here sign, and then we need to have the real sign that's in front of the building, I think is,
Well, I'd always thought that, not to get too far in the weeds here, but you know, the sign that says Gar Road, it should be G period, A period, R period.
Yeah.
And it should say right under it what that means.
Exactly.
Grand Army Republic, not, because it's not Gar Road, it's GAR Road.
Yeah.
And.
Bill.
That's an issue.
But, I'm missing a meeting tomorrow night with Memorial Hall, so they're probably gonna talk about this some. Doesn't bother me where it goes, really. I mean, if it's an architectural thing, we probably wanna figure out where it's gonna go.
Yeah, exactly.
By the hall, but, it's nice to have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
no, I think it's great. Thanks for making this a project and adding to the community. It's a cool thing to recognize. I attended an event and had similar questions. So I think the more of this information that can be documented in a fixed way, for the public is awesome. So I guess, can we entertain, I guess, like conditional approval of some sort? The application is already in, it already, has
Or just.
been
general
approved.
There is
support.
a-
General
There
support.
is a form I need the select board to sign
Oh,
at some point.
What does it say? What are we saying?
It's just,
Are we approving the wording or?
yeah, just the wording.
Okay.
So.
Is it all, I think all this is in your select board folder, isn't it?
But he said the wording was
Oh,
changed.
The wording has changed.
And yeah.
What's the timeline? When do you need them to sign?
As soon as possible would be great, so we can, they can start building the sign, putting the sign together, because it'll take 8 months to be put together, so.
Okay, so do you have the current wording, the final?
Yeah, I have the wording right here and on my cell phone.
Or maybe you could tell us what
I-
changes were.
They were I sent it to Tegan and Kari, but.
If Kari, maybe you could put it up on the screen for everybody to see.
Just forward it to.
Oh, that works with you, so good.
It was a very last minute, like, they were just last minute tweaks, it wasn't very substantial
Okay, so
changes.
small
But is
changes.
this the final or what
This-
are the other tweaks?
This was the final unless,
Okay.
unless the board had any tweaks.
So, did you send it to me or do
I replied to an email, I can send.
Just now?
Yeah, just a little bit ago.
Oh, okay. Okay,
I got a
yeah, I should be able.
text from Mary Jacobson. You've been talking to her a little
Yeah.
bit too. And she said there was a new version.
Can you see it?
So this is the new one?
Yeah, this is what he
This
just
is
said.
the. Sorry.
It was both Mary and and Laura, who's the, Department of Historic Preservation,
Got it, okay, thank you.
Officer Division.
And by Mary, you mean Mary Jacobson?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see they added the periods.
Thank you.
Thank
Everybody ready for me to scroll?
Mhm.
And there's 2 sides.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm not sure that the word wood frame is hyphenated.
I'll look it up. It might not be generally.
I think I could wood space framed, but I don't know. Again. Very good.
Yeah, no, that's a nice sign. The wood frame house. I see it both ways.
What,
It's used both ways.
what is this sign made out of? Is it like a bronze thing it's painted or how is that done?
I don't know the exact way they're made, but it's like it's the green ones that are
Okay.
around. With the, I'm
They're
guessing
cast?
stainless
I think they're
steel.
cast, yeah.
Okay,
There's one.
I think I believe they're cast.
yeah, I've seen that one. Okay.
Pitch and North Mount Hill.
Oh, the one at
Oh,
Kent
so
Museum too.
Museum.
What?
that's
One at the Kent Museum
Yeah.
also. That's what, okay.
The historical markers.
Yeah.
Nice.
And what you've written here will fit without wearing glasses?
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that?
There's 2 sides to it. so-
Two-sided,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you need all 5 select board members or just one appointed select board member to sign? And do
I
you?
don't have the printed form right there.
So if we
But
authorize
we
one
can-
person to sign
Yeah,
it,
just-
and I can print it,
yeah.
I can sign it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And do we still need to condition it, on the, the approval of the placement on, with the
Approval of property
hall
owner.
association or property owner?
Yeah, I think we can say he's okay to go ahead and have the sign made,
Yeah.
but we can later figure out where it's gonna go, yeah.
Right, and if they refuse, then we'll just put it wherever we can, as close as we can.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine, there might be some dialogue on whether or not we want it closer or further, but yeah, I can see that we can,
Yeah.
can approve it.
Yeah.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion to accept the language that's proposed for the historic marker for the hall and to authorize a signature. Me, I guess.
Authorize Jordan to sign.
Thanks.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Do I have to abstain from this or not?
You don't have to abstain.
Okay, then yes, I'm fine with it.
You have a financial stake in it.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite. So no, thank you.
We need our permission for ceremony because we don't own the hall.
Yeah.
But they love an invitation.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
I'm gonna, in March, I go down to Capitol Hill, I'll be walking over Capitol Hill for Biosphere Preservation with our senators, and then I head to their annual conference in Boston. So.
Wow, nice, impressive.
Very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for being involved.
Thank you.
Run for select board someday.
So we'll circle back to the East Montpelier.
I think we can make this one quick.
Yeah.
Last we left it, the East Montpelier Select Board was gonna have their attorney draft the language that we agreed to.
Yes.
I came to realize that they didn't have their attorney do it. It was done by their town administrator. And it kind of shows. So, I'll share my feedback and you see if there's anything you want to add, because it clearly needs to go through another review.
Document Joe McLean's comments though. And it said it was Joe McLean that was commenting.
That was,
I
No,
know,
that was private. There was a couple.
Barrows.
So.
Oh.
no. Anyway, there are two key issues here that we identified. One is one is something considered maintenance, a maintenance item that the fire department will pay for versus a capital expenditure that the towns need to contribute to. And remember, the example that came up last year was a repair to the boiler. And so what we had said was that if it's, above some threshold, 3,000 was the number that was put out there, that it would be considered capital, and we wanted to define that. So there is in section 6 a definition of a capital item of 3,000 or more. So that's good. It seems like there's more to that definition. It's also something that is in use for at least a year is the typical thing. So we're going to define it. But what it doesn't do is address what if it's an unplanned expense. That's sort of the key thing. If it's less than $3,000 or less than the threshold, and even if it's a capital item, the agreement, the direction we were heading was that the fire department would pay for that. So it needs to have reference to an unplanned expense of less than whatever that threshold is. Does that make sense?
So
And it doesn't do that. It's not clear enough on that point, I don't think.
it's regular maintenance, that's a planned expense, but if it's a repair, that's an unplanned expense.
Something, well, if it's a regular item that they put into their operating budget and we had a chance to approve, that, that's clearly going to be an operational item. If it's a item below this threshold, that's an emergency unplanned repair, the fire department will pay for it, but if it's something that's unplanned above that threshold, then the towns are gonna have to pay for it. So part of this is not just what's the definition of a capital item, but was it planned or unplanned?
But
Gotcha.
they have a repair budget, don't they?
Right, but they didn't necessarily plan for the repair. You know what I mean? So like the boiler, it just came up. And then the question is it above the threshold or not? So I think that needs to be addressed in.
Yes, I agree.
It's a fairly straightforward thing, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's proper as written.
It was planned to be in the repair budget, like she said,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but it's an unplanned item.
Yeah.
That's the crux of this.
Okay.
So the other issue was giving the fire department discretion to use their contingency fund. They already have that, but bumping up the levels to current, modern standards. We pretty much agreed to the 40,000 per year on an annual basis. They can use up to 40,000 from their contingency fund. And then anything greater, any one item greater than 20 would need approval from the select boards. And I think the language that's in there gets the gist of that, but it's not how a lawyer would write it, I don't think. And then the other thing just to remember is that $3,000, I don't think that we didn't shake hands on that or anything. That's not set in stone. That was just a number that people sort of, seemed to agree to, but it wasn't final.
And the capital funds are their ambulance replaces those, is that right? Where does that money come from?
Their capital fund,
Yeah.
so they're taking their receipts from insurance billing
Yeah,
and using that.
but in the capital, that's coming from the ambulance stuff, okay, that's right, I thought I remembered.
So it's a somewhat convoluted funding mechanism, but that's the model we've been using.
Okay.
So if those 2 points make sense, I can give them that feedback, and they're gonna need to bring this back to us anyway. So
Yes, those 2 points make sense. Thank you, Kari.
Thanks, Kari. Yeah, I'm not. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. Very good. So I think that puts us into reports, I'm sorry, ordinance committee.
It's a Freudian slip.
Or something.
Sleep deprivation slip. This, has everybody had a chance to review kind of the proposal that Ann had put together? I can provide the kind of context there. Essentially, we wanted to form a committee that will be kind of systematically working their way through the ordinances. And rather than kind of charging any particular committee with looking at an ordinance or spinning up a committee for one ordinance, this would be an ordinance committee that would be made up of ideally 2 select board members and some community members to look at our ordinances and make recommendations to the select board, but also with the charge of priorities from the select board. So that there's kind of a prioritized list of things to work through that kind of drives that dialogue and review. And then those recommendations would come to the select boards to the select board for approval. And so tonight we, I guess, need to have a conversation about whether or not we want to make any changes to the charge or the scope of that work. Talk about the makeup of it a little bit and how many individuals we want on that committee and what the representation is going to look like. And then make sure that we're clear on what the first list of priorities are, and how that's gonna be rolled through. Does that feel like a fair summarization of the ordinance committee? So with that, does anybody have any questions or feedback on the charge for this particular committee?
You're calling it the ordinance ordinance committee. I was calling it ordinance and policy review because I thought they were.
Yes.
Policies, just.
I thought
Well-
we just doing ordinances for this one.
So, can I ask you, the memo starts out saying there already is a policy and ordinance review committee, is that correct?
Well,
Do you want me to answer that one?
you can.
We started a policy and ordinance review committee, and then we realized, which I don't think any of us had a solid handle on, is policies are usually in-house, how we run the town office, how we pay bills, how we probably make sure the wheels keep running. And ordinances are town laws, and ordinances have a lot more, you know, meat behind them, we can call the sheriff on them, they have fines, they have all sorts of stuff, and they affect the entire public. So we realized that if we were going to be talking about ordinances, we would probably need to be publicly warning these meetings that at the moment are not publicly warned. We meet once a month, every 2 weeks or so, and discuss policies without warning, without, you know, structured minutes. But if we're gonna be working on ordinances that do affect the entire population of the town, particularly the road ordinances that we've been discussing, we can't do that behind closed doors. It's gonna have to be a charged committee, publicly warned with minutes and all the bells and whistles that go with it.
Yeah, and to be fair and clear, right now, the only dialogues that have been had have been around, the internal policies, that have been brought to the select board and warned, but we have fairly deliberately, mostly out of the scope of work, been putting off any, ordinance dialogue, but there's been community requests for consideration of certain ordinances, and certainly there are ordinances that need to be reviewed. And so that's why we're, I guess, calling it referring to it as an ordinance. And it probably would make sense for flexibility to leave it at ordinances and not wrap up the policies. That would probably afford the town the ability to review, and the select board the ability to review policies that are more internal facing.
It's just that the select board doesn't, and which is how we got into this situation where we have all these outdated policies and ordinances. So I was envisioning a committee that would try to stay on top of all of it and be ready to act. If somebody from the staff came to us and said, we really need to update the purchasing policy.
So we're planning to keep the policy committee that we have, or we're planning to dismantle that? Because I envision that sticking around as a somewhat regularly meeting policy
Okay, well,
committee.
the way I've written this is the policy and ordinance committee, so I guess we didn't have a clear understanding of what we were talking about. I don't care which way we go, I just want to be sure we don't lose the ability to also keep track of the policies and guidelines and rules that are different from the ordinances, which is what happened to us in the past.
So can you just keep the policy committee intact the way it's been for the last 6 or 8 months? And then now create an ordinance committee that's community based and just let the two work separate from each other.
Yeah, if you want. And you could actually, as the staff person, Tegan, you could call the meetings as needed.
Yeah, I don't, where there are any interplay between the two, I don't think there's anything that would preclude the committee from raising something to the select board's attention. I would just wanna, I wouldn't wanna put the select board in a position where it couldn't act, quickly if it needed to on a particular policy issue. I think policies, just by their nature, there could be times when a policy needs to be taken up and considered
It happens
more
all the time,
quickly.
state law
Right,
changes,
sure,
and so we have to revise our policies. Yeah.
Where I think the ordinances are afforded a little bit more time and also have a lot more rigor around their changes. So
As long as our town clerk is tracking it and making sure that we're staying up to speed.
Yeah.
And has a mechanism for doing that, it's fine with me.
we'll add it to the many roles and responsibilities that are formally described under the.
Well, I think it might also be a good idea as a policy group to just take a peek at them and think, okay, this one should probably be reviewed every year, this one maybe every 3 years. So if we all decide together to set a specific schedule, then I'm happy to keep track of that and with Barbara, make sure that it gets onto agendas as necessary for review.
So are you comfortable making a modification then to the ordinance review committee?
Yeah.
All right. Makeup. I think it would be beneficial to have, select board members on, members or a member. Should we start maybe just with the size? And then we'll break it down from there.
This thing recommends 5.
Yeah, I think the numbers to consider are probably 5 to 7.
Yeah, you want to think about people who are, it's not gonna be just specific to one topic. It's a great variety of topics, and what we really need is people who are good at legal minds kind of thing. Who can, you know, are able to read the state laws that govern what controls the ordinances and make sure that we're reading the laws.
From a record keeping perspective, I think what we had discussed, maybe having the town clerk being a standing member of the committee to make sure that there's some continuity between record keeping and other kind of ordinance related interplay with documentation. And Tegan so far has expressed comfort with that relative to her workload and meeting commitments. I think at least one select board member would also need to be on there. And I guess that would be an appointment, but we could say that it would be a standing select board member or 2. In the event that one person can't attend.
And then I think we should advertise to see what kind of interest there is out there in the community for people who'd like to be on. And once we see who applies, we can.
Decide on the final number.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I would ask that someone write a job description. Maybe that might be you, Ann. But then also, and in the job description, I would recommend that town citizenship residency be required.
What would the frequency be? What frequency could you handle?
Not too much.
Okay, once a month?
I think once a month sounds reasonable, and if we felt the need to change it going on, we could, but I feel like once a month is probably good at least to get started. It's gonna be a lot of dense work, and I feel like it'll probably be some amount of on the side work, doing research or drafting, so it's nice to give everyone who's going to be participating plenty of time to complete the tasks that are set for them before we meet again.
Because these are publicly warned, they will have to be, I guess. Will there be public comment? How do you get not lost in the weeds on that?
That's it. I'm assuming we would have to invite the public and invite public comment, but we would have to be fairly strict about limiting time.
Yeah.
But that would be the idea. I mean, we've been
Yeah.
talking about the Curtis Pond swim area. You want people to come in and talk about what they'd like to see in an ordinance
Sure.
and have a dialogue about it. Certainly when you're doing roads, there will be people who will want to come in.
And maybe as we take on an ordinance, it would be twice a month, so once for an open dialogue of, we'll set aside this many hours for people to come and talk and share what they need, and then the next one, we would start digging in and still allow for public comment, but it wouldn't be a longer affair, it would be more limited as far as public involvement.
It would be most efficient if we could go ahead and decide the standing time, day and time for this meeting, if it's gonna be once a month. The third Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. or whatever, and just go ahead and set that at a time that's convenient for you regularly.
It's the only Thursday I don't have anything.
I know. I think it's the day, but something that's convenient for you and convenient for whoever on this board.
It's not just me, it's gonna be one or two of you as well.
Oh, right, exactly, but you're all here together in the same room, so figure it out.
But usually the boards meet and decide what works for everybody. So I think we have to wait till we get the public members as well.
Well, but if you want to go ahead and get started, you could always change it, but maybe have a date and time.
So you're saying
To
it's
get
part of the
started.
advertisement. Yeah, this board will be meeting.
I think that's gonna be hard to do. I think we're gonna have to solicit some input on who's interested in,
I think you will too.
And so people will apply in writing with a letter of interest and the select board will interview all the applicants?
All the applicants.
Come running to this opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We interviews, I mean, we talked to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just the way we prefer it.
And maybe we could ask them as part of the conversation, what kind of availability do you have? If you say, oh, I travel a lot, I'm out of the country, I don't like driving after dark, and I don't, you start to see limitations where, and people are busy, a lot of people are very busy, so just getting kind of the scope of availability might be a question to ask.
So you're thinking once a month, is that what you said?
It's gonna take a long time to get anything done, isn't it?
I think maybe we can say once or twice a month as needed.
Okay.
At first, it's probably gonna be quite a bit because there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
But as things get more under control, we'll probably be able to slow down. And I think the idea was, what's recommended in this memo is to appoint a group for a year. And then we'll revisit in a year and see how it's working and what changes need to be made within.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's right. Not exactly an ad hoc, but one that's worth revisiting. And then if it's, seems like it's a perennial enough need, then we can figure out terms beyond that. It seems a little ambitious to think that we might be able to get through all of the whole list in a year. But
I think this is really done in a year.
well, I think frankly, I mean, I think that there's a certain number of ordinances that are probably gonna be pretty easy. You'd probably be able to do the swimming in a handful, that will not probably require as much conversation or cross dialogue, maybe, but.
But given the conversations here tonight, we know that the road affiliated ones are gonna have a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, and I just putting it out there, like, I think there's gonna be a lot of cross pollination between other policies and forms, and there's gonna be a whole scope of stuff that comes with that, so that one in and of itself could take the vast majority of the first year. And I guess there'll be some question on whether or not the speed limits are a part of that, or if we roll that out, separate from the others.
But I mean, even just when you stop and consider all the front porch forum about dogs at Curtis
Right.
Pond,
Yes.
just that one topic alone raised a lot of conversation.
Yeah. Right, which is why I sort of like your idea of the 2 meetings, one that's more open forum and then one that's more limited public comment, that could be more digging into the weeds.
Yeah, so that'll be part of, like, I guess, the organizational charge to a certain extent. Yeah. They'll need to form their own kind of operating procedure and adopt it.
So is the group okay if I write a job description and say, run it by my I was gonna say my co-members, Jordan and Tegan, and if the 3 of us agree that, and Curry.
I did not join this committee. I would like to go on the record.
You're on the policy.
Oh, I see.
I will run it by you guys, and if you guys think it's all right, we'll post it.
I think that's fair. Do we need to vote to form the committee, or can we not do that until we have a committee defined?
Good question. Seems like you're forming a, or chartering a committee.
We're
Well, right
chartering.
now, it seems like they're going to do a recruitment. So I would wait and see how many members you decide to appoint.
Yeah.
And in these conversations, you may decide that it's a 2-year term. Maybe you don't want turnover after a year if they haven't gotten very far but they're still actively engaged, but they've already had a lot of discussion among themselves. It may make sense to make it be a longer than a 1-year commitment.
Or staggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at the beginning, you stagger anything, yeah.
So I have written a committee charge in this memo, and we can just use that. I'll reread it in light of this discussion, and see some changes should be made.
Well, I think the charge can largely say, with some slight changes, but what the phrasing is that it hasn't been formed and that we're calling for interested parties, I guess, to help kind of define the size of the committee, and that its forming is going to be imminent unless there are any strong objections to forming this committee. But I think there's a real need, and I think relative to the scope of the projects that the select board needs to consider on a regular basis, like it'd be pretty well served to have a committee like this that is set and can be charged with looking at any ordinance, not just the ones that seem to pique interest.
From the time that it gets posted, how long do you want to give people to apply? Because some people felt like the DRB application period wasn't long enough. Back in March.
How long was the application period?
Well, we were posting it and it was a matter of weeks, but you got lots of pushback and enough time wasn't given for people to apply. Was that big?
Oh, on the select board opening,
Pardon?
the select board opening, so we got the.
Yeah, it was the select board.
And that was what, wasn't a month, it was less than a
It
month.
was very short.
It was a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, is that you might want to make it more than just a couple of weeks before the close of the window to apply for this new committee.
You think there's gonna be all these people who?
I don't know, I heard a lot of pushback that there wasn't enough time for people to apply for the DRB back when we were doing this before March town meeting.
Well, I guess we can do a two-step kind of process. So if we're soliciting some kind of recruitment feedback, that hopefully by the next meeting, we should have some initial feedback. That's gonna be 2 weeks, and then we don't make appointments until the beginning of October, so that we decide on the size. And then again, after next meeting, we form the committee, and then that gives us another 2-week period to continue to solicit applications for the open spots.
October 7th.
Yeah,
Essentially, start the committee then.
or we can make partial appointments. We could make partial appointments for the standing positions, and then we can charge those individuals with coming with a recommendation for the rest of the.
October 7th isn't a meeting, right? It's the 14th.
I was just gonna say, I was just looking, I think we moved it to the 14th.
It is on the 14th
The second.
and the 28th.
It's on the 14th, that's the
What's
holiday.
It's a holiday.
It's in the.
Indigenous.
Indigenous people, Columbus.
Yeah,
Oh.
Do we?
Anyone traveling?
Can't even tell anymore. Look at my phone that morning and just hope for the best. I don't have particular conflicts other than about school.
I'm fine.
I'm
sorry.
packing and packing, but I have that day.
So you're leaving What'd you say, a week from Thursday?
Yeah, so I'm leaving the 19th, so I'm gonna miss the meeting on the 22nd. But I get home.
23rd.
The 23rd. Need glasses.
Still be a Moroccan time.
I get back the 9th, so I'll be back for the 14th, but I would not be back if we did for that.
I can do the 14th.
The staff who has that day off.
Yeah,
We don't have any.
That's fine. I figured we'd be meeting that day, but.
We do it the 15th, or like, is that not the same?
As we can, there's no reason not to, as long as it's warned.
I may or may not be able to make that one,
No, that's good. The 14th or the 15th?
the 15th.
I'm looking on the town calendar, looking it up. Let's see.
You get back on the 9th, Jamie,
I'll be back
on the Wednesday, okay?
Planning Commission, October 15th.
So we're gonna have to go with the 14th.
So the planning commission has the town hall.
Yeah.
We could do it on the 7th. You really want to avoid the holiday.
And Jamie
And then
will
we
be
just
back.
missed it, Jamie.
And then we want to take it out.
They're discussing the first meeting in October
You want to have a.
for their regular meeting.
But Bill, you can make the 14th, is that right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sometimes we can all make the
Yeah.
14th.
Second Monday.
I think,
So
yeah,
it was just that people have the day off.
So that's okay.
Don't drink too much.
just people's know,
Easier said than done.
yeah. Okay, so we'll stick with the 14th then, okay. Great, so we'll, plan on getting some more information from Anne to the policy group, and then circulate a call for interest, with maybe a statement about why they might be of interest in like serving on a ordinance committee,
What skills might be helpful?
because we'll want to get that posted.
I think it should be ordinance advisory committee.
Yeah,
Yes,
Oh, that's good, yeah.
yes, thank you.
And we want the applications to be in a few days in advance of the 14th.
yeah, I guess we could say in the post that, on the, at our next meeting, we'll be considering the size of the group and potentially appointing standing committee members. And then, determining the balance of the size, I guess, and making final appointments potentially on the 14th.
So there's 2 deadlines for applications, or?
Well, I think that's kind of what that's,
No, the applications can keep coming until,
I don't see why they couldn't just come in on the 14th. I mean, that's what we do with the other commissions. We just say, you know, if you don't submit a written application, just come in and talk to us.
Yeah.
Well, I would have, when we did the energy committee, I had people make a statement of interest in what their skills were and so forth, and all of that was on a spreadsheet that I provided to the select board and to Bill L. So I think people should submit a letter of interest and their skills and why they want to contribute. And it'd be in your select board folder, so the week before, so that you can review and know who you're expecting to see on the 14th.
That would be helpful. Okay, so submit written statement.
I mean, that's just my suggestion, it's.
I say the 9th.
So what day of the week is
That's
that?
a Wednesday,
It's a
so
Wednesday.
Thursday we could compile
Yeah, okay.
Good, I like that.
So policy folks, when do you want to meet to talk about Anne's language? Probably the office.
Oh, I just thought I'd send it all to you.
Oh, okay.
Comment.
That works great. Perfect.
Is that, do we have enough on that? Yeah, me too.
Running out of steam here.
Yeah, so much. Reports, Curtis Pond, Jamie?
Things are going.
I'll kick it over to Carly, who wants to go first? Frankly, the fastest.
Things are going well. We had a complicated couple of days, discussing and negotiating with, around the pay order that was in the board orders tonight. But I think we came to an understanding. We had our status update meeting last Thursday, which is the engineers and Kari and I and dam safety and the contractors. I'd say everybody's feeling a little bit behind schedule. The original permits have us out of the water by October 15th. And that's seeming unlikely. So we're discussing a process of doing a slate permit modification to extend that deadline to November 1st to just give us a little more buffer. And there's brief conversations around if we start pushing that boundary a little bit, postponing a few finishing touches, not related to the dam or its safety, to the following spring. So like the removal of the boulders downstream, if we could get that done, that could be great. There's just some conversation about schedule. But overall, it's gonna get done. The rebar has started going in this week. We have Carroll Concrete lined up to do the first pour of the footing a week from today. So that's a pretty big milestone. It's gonna be 17 concrete trucks or something.
They're combining the first two pours. So, right, that's still the plan?
Right, there's been a lot of discussion on whether the footing would be done in 2 pours, 3 pours, 5 pours. The plan's changed 12 times over the last few weeks. But they settled on 2 pours. So they'll pour basically half of it. Okay. And then they'll pour the other half. The current plan is that Friday, so it'll be next week. 1 pour Monday, 1 pour Friday, the footing done. And then the next phase of concrete, that's the sort of actual dam wall. They're subcontracting out, which we have known, to a concrete company that does forms, and because it's a lot of complicated forming around the spillway and angles and everything. So that'll be a different crew coming in to form that. Starting the following week, thinks that'll be about 3 weeks to get that ready and do the final pour. Everything's coming in. I mean, everything's going well.
I noticed the lawyers have already used up half the contingency budget, more than that.
Yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, that was true early on. That was mostly around property easement permissions for construction staging.
Or the quick claim.
All the quick claim deeds to, yeah.
But so far Larry's on budget.
Yeah, we had the one change order, but we're expecting to see some savings at the end, so.
Right, the concrete, in the last delay, when we redesigned the dam a little bit, it's got one angle in it, and we're able to draw that angle back from, I think, 34 degrees to 27.5 degrees or something. Which had a net impact of shortening, and we were also able to cut 5 feet off one end. So he thinks we'll save 25,000 in the concrete cost. Which will cover the extra in the previous phases. He told me today he thinks that final budget will be under budget, which may be an optimistic.
Yeah.
Trying to sweet talk me into going over on certain things, but he's feeling optimistic that we'll come in under budget at the end of the project.
You've had some lucky breaks.
Yeah.
Along the way.
It's really going smoothly overall. he brought in an extra crew member for this week to do the rebar. It's very labor intensive and slow.
If I could just ask one thing, when concrete trucks always seem to be in a hurry. And when we're having these 17 trucks come and go, I would ask that they not go 25 through the village, but maybe think about doing 15. Because even a truck at that speed, that size going to the village is an awful lot to have happen. So I would like to have that happen, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's a good call. I'll pass that along.
I mean, it would be a real thorn in the side, but maybe for the first day we have the sheriff's department down there. Knowing that it's also a school bus pickup, et cetera, you know, just kind of set the tenor for the day. I don't know, but I agree. I think that's a pretty valid point. That's a pretty busy intersection and wanting to get going early. That's gonna be a lot of traffic.
Yeah. In terms of cash flow, the first half of the $200,000 loan the CPA took came in yesterday and hit the bank today. So the second half, the other party is traveling, and I think we're gonna connect soon, but it might be another week or two, but the CPA will be sending that check for $100,000 to the town. Do we need a separate agenda item and?
Yeah, well, we'll need to accept that donation.
So I guess that'll be on we'll write the check before I leave, but we should add that to the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Yep.
But that's not,
That's about half of the.
yeah, but we don't need it, and we still have some balance
Yeah.
from our other stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to get at least one chunk in before I left in case it was.
Because you're
for cash
well
flow.
organized. Good. All good.
Well, thank you, Jamie. That's awesome.
Mm.
Any other questions about the dam? We'll move on to Tegan.
I met with Ruben, with Architect, a little week ago to talk things, and consensus seems to be that because we are just putting everything else on the cloud, because we have Microsoft, because NIMRIC is moving to the cloud, we're ready to just move to the cloud and not have a physical server, which will sort of change how we budget for tech items. Right now, we're putting a big chunk in our capital fund for tech every year, because we know that every 5 years we have to buy this big server. And now we won't have to be doing that, but we will have more subscription costs, more regular monthly and annual fees and subscriptions. So he is working on sort of drawing up a rough estimate for me for what our monthly expenses are gonna be and how they'll change as we shift over to things. He's not gonna make those changes until we have NIMRIC moved over, because I guess that's something he has to wait for. And I'll have more about that when we do budgeting. NIMRIC tells me that they're gonna get back to me. I emailed them right after we approved switching to the cloud and said, let's get started, and I didn't hear back, and I emailed them again, and I said, you all are the ones who need us to do this, so that you can do your appraisal, and they said, it's been a crazy time, lots of people are on vacation, we'll get to you when we can. So they will get to us when they can.
As long as it's not during ramp up for town meeting, I guess, right?
They're the ones who've been pushing all the towns for a long time to do this, and now that we've expressed interest, it's been very weirdly quiet. So I don't know how to. Elections, the state has already collected everybody's addresses and they're preparing ballots. They'll be mailed out the end of September, so people will start getting ballots early October. If anyone is changing their address, or of anyone who needs a different address, send them to me, because we're gonna have a conversation about how that'll work. Tomorrow, I am going to, tomorrow. What day is it? It's Monday. Wednesday, I'm going to the Clerks and Treasurers Association Conference in Montpelier. I'll be there Wednesday and Thursday. They do trainings and networking, and I hear it's a good time. I went to half of one day last year because it was all the way down in Fairleigh, but because this one's in Montpelier and I don't need a hotel, I'm gonna go to both days and learn a bunch of things, and that should be cool. I don't know how much Jordan and I want to talk about the ordinance training we did, except that it was comprehensive and interesting, and there's always a lot more to learn. What was that?
Illuminating.
Illuminating. But we have some ideas for going forward, and if you all want more information on ordinances at some point, we can talk about that, but I feel like 9-10 is not the time to do a deep dive into the legalities of ordinance, construction. Barbara, is there anything else you can think of?
Thank you. Yes, I want to say one more thing about the welcome committee, which is local program, which is, I want to make sure you guys know that this is all volunteer for me. This is not on the clock, and volunteer with Friends of Calais. And where Tegan is letting us say that it's sponsored by not only Friends of Calais, but the town office, because she's allowing me to do color print jobs. And she's giving us a presence on the website. So that's why it's Town of Calais and not because you guys are paying me to do this at all. It's all volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Barbara.
It's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed working on developing those brochures.
Yeah,
And then meeting with people has been awesome.
that's wonderful.
Unrelated.
Yeah. We're gonna get all kinds of intelligence about who's moving into town. What they're like, where they're moving from and why. I used to live one.
Well, thank you, Barbara, and Tegan, yeah, absolutely, we'll move on to the ordinance thing. Kari?
So 3 items. One, we had a successful outcome on the dog protective order amendment.
That's good.
Got it signed. Completed it. Hopefully there's.
Well, and apparently it's the most lovely dog ever. I read the letter.
No conflict there, right? Second was about the town administrator performance evaluation. So I talked about this with Jamie and Jordan a couple times. Just good practice, but also I was asking for the feedback in terms of thinking about next year's staffing model. So a couple things we're trying to do, and I proposed a process. So inputs would be, you're all forms that you fill out individually and then come together. And I drafted a form, just basically took the job description and put it into a template. And then a timeline.
I assumed it was that you had sort of massaged it based on how the job was.
No, I cut and pasted the job description.
Wow.
You didn't have time for massaging.
Oh,
No, you haven't changed it, right?
no.
Yeah. Maybe the policy.
Yeah, well, we can certainly tweak this process in the future, but anyway, that seemed like a good starting point. If you wanna change anything about that form, that's great, but. And then the process would be, move along fairly quickly and, hope to wrap up by, the 14th of October.
So you want us all to fill out that form?
Yeah, so what we would do is finalize the form this week. We will email it to you, give you 2 weeks to fill it out. It'll get compiled. Then, I think what I propose is that we could talk in executive session and then you could talk. And then someone will have to write it up and communicate back to me. Or, you know,
So
something like that.
what you're thinking is the full select board and you. And
Have a conversation.
Executive session.
Yeah. And then I can leave and you can.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, talk.
yeah.
Thanks
That's how it works, right?
Thanks for taking the lead on your own.
Yeah.
Gold star.
We appreciate you.
So,
Thanks for filling it in, too.
does that generally work? Does that seem like
I
a,
think this is good.
I think
yeah,
that's-
it's a starting point, and we'll make it better next year. Okay, and then the third thing is, we didn't have time to deal with it tonight, but the Pelchucks did provide a proposal
Yes.
to sell us a parcel of land.
Yeah.
And so that's something we'll need to discuss, and I assumed we would put it on the agenda for next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody have any
Many
questions about that?
opportunities.
Yeah.
I have thoughts, but not questions.
Yeah, I don't. That sounds good.
All right.
And as far as the Shed v. Calais issue, we are currently waiting for, some input from the court. Until, we, officially file, a request from the court, to schedule a hearing, and withdrew, the settlement, agreement that we were, trying to work towards. So we are now waiting on the court.
So you're waiting for the court to schedule a hearing?
It's, yeah, a hearing, essentially with a strong recommendation for why there's a sense of urgency around getting it scheduled, soon. And, to potentially make some decisions. So that we're still waiting to hear whether or not they've kind of accepted that. Or will schedule the hearing. At the moment. Yeah, no need for any additional dialogue, on my part, or executive session unless anybody wants to discuss it further. But you're also welcome to give me a call, if you have any other questions. And with that, I guess I would entertain, oh, nope, Jamie had one more thing, that.
I just wanted to quickly circle back to an old thing that I have an update on. Which is the generator transfer switch that you remember the town bought intending to use here for this generator. Brookfield said it was not adequate for this generator. It's new in the box. I think it's in Nick Ellen's garage. The select board had at the time sort of said, if some store or community entity needed it, we pass it to them. The Maple Corner store is getting a generator installed in a couple of weeks. And it was also deemed inadequate for our use.
Oh, goodness.
So we're having to buy one. And basically Brookfield said it's not compatible with the generators they sell. And so I'll talk to Nick about it, but my general thought is, or our general thought is that nobody in town is probably gonna use it and the town should, think about selling it on eBay or.
What did it cost the town?
I don't think it's much. I think it's worth $300 or $400.
Yeah, a few $100.
Usually cost more than that, but.
It depends on the transfer switch, and depends on the service side.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it might not just be scaled properly for that, but it might make sense for like a residential application. So, I guess if we have the specs, we could probably post it online and see if there's a community member who's installing a generator.
Right, exactly.
That would want a transfer switch. There's usually a lot more flexibility there, wider variety of generators. All right. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, thank